If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
From the low, welcome to Multi Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you guys. Joining me in segment number 2, where you're going to be joined by Nick Lorensen. He does incredible work over at Mid-Major Madness. It is a Thursday in college basketball, which means that we're going to be taking a look at a lot of the low/mid-major teams with them, and we're going to be cutting the recap very, very short because we've got north of 60 games on the betting board. I have to do this at about 7:15 p.m. Pacific time, and the Greg Peterson Experience that is from 9 to midnight. I have to drive on over to the casino and everything like that, so this is going to be a short first segment, but we're going to maximize the way that we're taking a look at these mid-majors with them. Coupled with that, we're going to be taking a look at a few teams that he just has his eye on in general with regards to the national landscape and a few games to watch for this Thursday. And then in the final segment, you're going to be getting like 2 hours and 40 minutes of college basketball breakdowns as I give you picks and analysis on every single game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, and like I said, we have to cut this relatively short, so we're going to be doing only about a 5-minute recap here, but let's take a look at some of the highlights that we saw from this college basketball Wednesday, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Well, the itsy-bitsy Spiders of Richmond continue to be one of your best cover teams in all of college basketball. They were able to go on the road. They get it done against Fordham by a count of 83-69, and for Richmond, this has been an incredibly impressive team. They go 8 of 14 from three-point range. Fordham, just a relatively disappointing offensive team. They go 9 of 27 from distance, and Jordan King was the king on this day. He was able to chip in there 29 points for a Richmond team that is now 16-4-1 against the spread. That is the second best cover rate in all of college basketball. They've really been able to cook with some gas, and they've been able to get the job done time and time again. And Southern Illinois has been one of those teams that has been able to get the job done time and time again, but they did fall short against Missouri State on Wednesday. Southern Illinois is about a 4.5-point favorite. They lose in overtime by kind of 76-75. This was a game where Southern Illinois was leading by double figures during the second half. They were up 12 points with about 12 minutes remaining, and for that matter, I believe that they were up something like 8 points with about 4 minutes remaining as well. Xavier Johnson, one of the top scorers in all of college basketball, he was still able to supply the team with 28 points, and for Southern Illinois, they go 13 of 27 from three-point range, but they lost a turnover battle 16-7, very uncharacteristic of them. Meanwhile, Donovan Clay, he was the best player out there on the side of Missouri State. 24 points, 7 boards. It's a Missouri State team that always prides themselves on defense, and they were able to get the job done there. Under the radar, Lehigh has all of a sudden become a relatively solid cover rate team. They are now 12-6 against the spread. They take down Navy by a count of 77-65. They've been dealing with an injury to one of their top scorers out there in the fold, as you still have Tyler Whitney Sidney being able to give you double figures, but they moved out Keith Higgins for now the last 6 or 7 games. They were without him once again in this one, but they still go 12 of 28 from three-point range against an Navy team that's been one of the best in all of college basketball, being able to guard the arc. So those were a few teams that are very good against the spread that stood out. We just saw Florida take down Kentucky. This is 94-90 with about 10 seconds remaining as Florida went 12 of 28 from three-point range in this game. Walter Clayton went berserk with 23 points, and though Kentucky was able to bounce back for back-to-back games where they were held below 70 points, certainly the defense was a little bit of an issue. You did have 16 rebounds out of Ogana Onyesu. He was very solid in this game, but for Kentucky, they were going with some different rotations. Rob Dillingham was able to come in off the bench. He was able to give the team 20 points, but this has been a team that has been dealing with some injuries. You did not have Wagner out there in the fold for Kentucky as well. well, so could be interesting to see how they respond off of that one. You saw Purdue get taken to overtime by Northwestern. They don't get the cover, but they were able to win 105-96, as Purdue has actually been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball. Zach Edey, giant of the earth, he was able to go off for 30 points, and it was a Northwestern bunch that they went 14 of 27 from three-point range, but Purdue, they were able to do a nice job of countering. They were able to go 10 of 21 from three, and for Purdue, they won the free throw battle. 29 out of 46 is what they shot at the free throw line. 6 of 8 for Northwestern. Have to have your question marks there, to say the least, as for Northwestern, they had 31 total fouls in this game, which I do find to be a little bit hilarious, and along with Purdue being a good cover team, with what we just saw, Kentucky, they're now 15 overs and 5 unders overall for the season, so they've been one of the best in all of college basketball with that regard, but relatively harebrained and insane result there. By the way, one of the best under teams in college basketball entering into the slate on Wednesday, Vanderbilt, they entered in their 5 overs to 14 unders. Right now, it's a little bit nip and tuck between they and Auburn. It's 44-30 with about 17 minutes remaining in the second half. That was a closing total of 143.5, so we'll see if they're going to be able to maintain. And then on the road, you did see Baylor take down Central Florida by kind of 77-69. It's been a Baylor team that has been struggling from three-point range recently, but they go 9 of 20 from distance in this one with 24 big points out of Langston Love off the bench against the Central Florida team that entered into the night 4th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Central Florida loses this game despite the fact that they had the duo of Jalen Sellers along Jarius Johnson combined to go 9 of 16 from three-point range for a combined 37 points, but for Central Florida, they lose a turnover battle 16-9, so that was a little bit of an issue. My DK Network write-up of Boise State versus New Mexico, that is yet to start, so hopefully we can get another winner there, and if you had Alabama, you were able to get a winner thanks to a strong second half. Alabama outscores Georgia 58-35, 85-76 a final. This one does fall under the total, as Alabama has been a relatively good over team thus far this season, as they are now 14 overs to 7 unders, but for Georgia, they were just completely controlled in this game in the first half. Alabama, they just were able to break away with only going about 8 of 23 from three-point range, but getting a lot out of the duo of Grant Nelson along with Mark Sears, a combined 43 points there. And for Georgia, they do go 7 of 17 from three-point range. RJ Melendez, 15 points, 10 rebounds, but Alabama, they're able to go out there after a rough first half. They're able to get the job done, and they're able to take control of that game. And right now, taking control of the betting splits that we are seeing in college basketball right now is unders. In the last 7 days, we have seen 163 unders, 148 overs. That's a hit rate of 52.4% to the under. Meanwhile, home underdogs still struggling. In the last 7 days, 49, 52, and 1 against the spread, while home teams pretty much 50-50. 157, 156, and 1 against the spread. Do keep in mind, doing this with plenty of games from Wednesday still pending. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the entirety of the season, home underdogs hitting at just 49.1%, 451, 468, and 16 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs still hitting at a 51.4% clip, 1,783 and 1688. I do apologize about having to do the recap a little bit quickly, but we have north of 60 games on the board for Thursday. We've got the Greg Peterson experience to do, so I had to make this a little bit shorter, but that said, you're going to be getting a nice chat coming up next with our good friend Nick Lorensen. We're going to be taking a look at the lay of the land with many of these mid-majors, taking a little bit of a look at the Atlantic 10, and so much more with him right here on Kennesaw St with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Houston Family Podcast. To lovely Las Vegas for Kennesaw St with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, as Nick Lorensen. He does absolutely tremendous work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He does a great job looking at all these teams, every team from the power conferences all the way down to the mid and low major teams. He is absolutely impeccable with regards to that. On top of that, he is part of the Queens NC coaching staff, trying to get that team built up out there in the Atlantic Sun. To be able to follow Nick on Twitter, you're able to do so at the letter N. His last name, Lorensen, spelled Lorensen, the word sports all together. And Nick, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I always love hopping on here. We had a great Saturday at mid-major basketball. I mean, every week we're getting closer to March Madness. We're entering February, which means we're only about, there's 28 days in February until March. So it's almost time for March Madness, the best time of the year. But let's enjoy these last couple weeks of conference play leading up to that.
Absolutely. I do have to make a correction to you, though, because there's 29 days. It's a leap year this year, so there is an extra day in the month of February. But that said, what have you been making out of the last few weeks in terms of conference play, because I feel like a lot of these mid-major conferences have been so fascinating because we still do have a few undefeated teams in these conferences. Like McNeese has been able to roll through the Southland, though they've been getting a few scares along the way. I know that Colgate took a loss or two out there in the Patriot League, but they've been rolling. But it does feel like we're seeing a lot of a rise with regards to the cream of the crop with regards to these mid-major conferences.
100%. And I feel like when you get a little bit too confident about one of these teams, though, they'll kind of start to struggle. There hasn't really been many teams outside of the Mountain West that you can say are legitimate NCAA tournament contenders for an at-large bid. St. Mary's is slowly creeping back into that. I believe that they should probably be in the field at this point. I know they had a really tough non-conference, and none of those losses look all too bad when all is said and done, maybe Weber State. But there's really, Mountain West, you have all those teams. And then there's a couple leagues, like you mentioned, like the Southland and the CAA really before last week when Drexel lost to Towson. There's a pretty big dip from the top to even maybe the 3-4 spot in a lot of these leagues. You got Eastern Kentucky and the A-Sun to mention one. They have a 2-game lead. You mentioned McNeese State. There are a couple more out there. But with all this, I don't think it's going to be an amazing year for at-large bids with these mid-major conferences, these true mid-major conferences. We're kind of banking on say McNeese State. McNeese is probably our best chance of getting a lower major at-large bid, but there's also teams like, Richmond. People didn't think that Richmond, after having a really tough November, they kind of bounced back once they beat Queens. They're undefeated in conference play. They had that big win against Dayton over the weekend. They have that 1-game lead up on top, but there's definitely a big difference between 1 and 3 in a lot of these leagues. The 2 leagues that I really say that there's a great competition at the top would be the Ivy League and the Missouri Valley. And you can throw the A-10 in there too with Dayton and Richmond.
Yeah, with the Atlantic 10, it has been interesting to take a look at this conference. We always get that 1 or 2 games in the Atlantic 10 every Friday. This week it's going to be St. Bonaventure versus Dayton, which that is going to be a great game, by the way. But how do you take a look at the Atlantic 10? Because coming into conference play, I thought that there was a chance that we'd be able to see a few teams be able to contend for an at-large. And out of all the teams, it does appear as though Richmond, aside from obviously Dayton, who's currently ranked in the top 25, they've been able to get things rocking and rolling. But other than Dayton, I feel like they're their best hope in terms of an at-large bid, just because with how good the conference is, everyone is just beating up on everyone else.
Yeah, we've mentioned it the last couple of weeks. We had teams like, say, a St. Joe's or Duquesne heading into conference play, even a St. Bonaventure heading into conference play, where you're like, if things go right for this team, they obviously have the talent. The A-10 could get back to having a couple bids. And after the first couple weeks where those teams really struggled, it wasn't looking like that when you had Richmond, Dayton, Loyola at the top of the league. But Richmond really has been playing great basketball the last 2 months, and they defended their home court on Saturday. They got a win against Dayton, opened a lot of eyes. Coach Mooney's had some amazing teams over there, as Princeton style. This might be up there. They've never had a start like this in A-10 play before. They're 7-0 in A-10 play. They obviously beat a Dayton team who's pretty much a lock at this point for the NCAA tournament, barring something dramatic happen and them losing some pretty bad A-10 games. We have a Richmond team that kind of sneaks in there. Hopefully we'll get the league back to a 3-bid league. I believe it didn't happen last year, but it happened the year before that. Maybe that's the right trajectory that the league needs heading towards the future. I also think, Duquesne had that awful start, the 0-5 start, and a lot of these games are close, and they were just not playing good basketball. They were not running many actions. Everyone wasn't together. But then Day-Day Grant got his concussion. I don't want to be that guy, but they kind of started playing more cohesive basketball with him out and Jimmy Clark at the helm. And now they've rallied off 2 wins in a row. I wouldn't be shocked, Duquesne sneaks in maybe to a double bye, because there'll be a couple teams up there, maybe 3-4, that are in the 4-5 loss range. And if Duquesne continues playing good basketball, they could surprise someone. They could get Richmond or Dayton in the semifinals. And hey, maybe the Dukes can make the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1977, I believe it was. It was either 77 or 79. It might have been 79 because it was whenever my grandfather started teaching there.
Yeah, it has been a while for the old Dukes, and they used to be a pretty good college basketball school way back in the day as well. So it would be nice to see them come to the forefront, though. They've been a team that, for me, I'm not sure how you view this team. They've just been a little bit strange to evaluate, because you mentioned Day-Day Grant, you mentioned Jimmy Clark. those are like the only two guys on the roster that average north of 8 points per game. I'm not sure if you've been able to get a good grasp on them, but they've been one of the harder teams for me to evaluate all season long.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, they have so many moving pieces in that front court too, where I really don't think they have a solid face or a solid leader in that front court. They have Jakob Nixis. They have the kid from NC State, Towson. They have the Drame twins. They have the freshman, D. Michael. He's kind of worked his way into that leadership role as a freshman. So it's tough at this point, and it's going to be more interesting when Day Grant comes back and he's fully healthy and he's playing with the team. It's tough to read this bunch. And I feel the same way about St. Bonaventure because, at home sometimes they look like a great squad. They have some really strong players, but as we're recording this right now, they've had a really tough start against a good VCU team who actually, if they were a team at this point to kind of sneak into that talk, and I don't think they're an at-large team at this point, and they had a really tough non-conference, but they could potentially be a top maybe 3 seed in the NIT. They've been playing great basketball. Ryan Odom's bunch, I believe, has won 7 of their last 9.
Yeah, they have been playing some nice basketball, and keep in mind with that VCU team, Joe Bejmili along Sean Bairstow, they were out of the fold for the first 10 or so games of the season as well. So now they are finally fully healthy, and that's big for them and big for us on this show is Nick Lorensen, who does great work over at Mid-Major Madness, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And when it comes to the Thursday slates, they're always very strange in my opinion, because you get a lot of games, but you do get a lot of those lower level games like out there in the NEC. We're going to be seeing a lot of Horizon League, what have you, but I do think that it is really interesting to take a look at what we're getting in the Sun Belt because we've got two teams that if they just continue to win, I don't know if either of them would be able to get an at-large bid. I think that James Madison is very much live for it. Appalachian St might be up against it even with their tremendous win against Auburn, but I think that those are two teams worth watching. Now, granted, they're going to be playing against teams that are below 500 in Georgia State along with Coastal Carolina, but I think that those are two teams that the casual college basketball fan looking for a low to mid major to get into the NCAA tournament should keep their eyes on because James Madison and Appalachian State have big time wins, and these two teams, in my opinion, are the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to talk about JMU, and their offense has been great the last couple of years. Their defense has kind of been rallying this year and making them that better bunch. Obviously, they had that season opening win against Michigan State, but outside of that, when you look at their resume, it's not all too impressive. And it's going to get even more difficult because they lost a humongous one on Saturday. They went into Boone, they lost against App State, and they lost the season series against those Mountaineers. I know App State was picked first in the preseason poll, but they didn't have the most flashy non-conference schedule with the exception of Auburn, so they didn't really gain many eyes. I mean, they beat Auburn on their home court, and that's going to end up being an amazing win to their resume. I saw them. They came into the Curry Arena, Levine Center, played our Queens Royals, and they're just a rock. Every single player on that team is a rock. It's so difficult to get past them. Great defensive team. Dustin Kearns has been able to do it for a long time. And the thing is, they're so balanced. Donovan Gregory, I would say, is probably their leader at this point. But for a long time, for these last couple of years, it's just been even averages across the board. So maybe they don't catch the eye of the average fan because there's not really anyone to keep an eye out for on that team. But, if App State continues winning in this conference slate and they maybe lose one more, I think there should be a good chance for the Mountaineers to get an at-large bid. JMU probably has to win out all the way until the conference title game for them to make the NCAA, or for them to get an at-large bid.
Yep, I do think that it's going to take quite a bit to be able to get that at-large bid, but been very impressed by both of those teams, and they are two teams I'm certainly going to be locked in on for Thursday, certainly. If either of them take a loss on Thursday, that would be pretty ghastly, but been very impressed by the play that we've been seeing all season long out of them, as Nick Lorensen, who does tremendous work over at Mid-Major Madness, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Nick, a conference that you know a whole heck of a lot about, I can't imagine why, is the Atlantic Sun, because obviously your guys over there at Queens NC, you guys are going to have a very busy next week or two. You guys have some big games coming up, but how do you take a look at the tenor of the Atlantic Sun? Because we did see the Lipscomb North Florida game on Wednesday, and right now I do take a look at things. I think that Lipscomb is becoming sort of that team to beat, but you guys on Thursday have a team in Eastern Kentucky that has the nation's top shot blocker and Isaiah Cozart, and this is a team that I do think is very dangerous, and after a ghastly start to the season, they're one team that I'm looking at moving forward in terms of mid-major ranks.
Yeah, they had a really tough start this season. I mean, I remember watching them in an afternoon game It was a Kids Day game. They lost to Prairie View A&M, who aren't exactly world beaters in the SWAC. So you can't let that happen. But they've been a completely different team as conference play started. This is their best start in conference play history at the D1 level for Eastern Kentucky. They're 7-0. You mentioned it, Greg. They have Isaiah Cozart down low, who's one of the more underrated big men in the country. He's 6'8", and he's just a rock down there. Against Troy at the beginning of the season, he had 11 blocks. I mean, he's just insane. They post him up every single play. It's going to be a little bit difficult for our guys because I don't think they're amazing in the post. He's a really, really good player in the post. So you have him there. They have Michael Moreno, who can stretch out, shoot threes really well. They have about 3 other guys that can shoot the 3 ball really well. When you look at teams, I'm not saying that they're going to win an NCAA tournament game, but when you look at teams that win these NCAA tournament games, they usually have something special going on with them. They do something different that not the normal team does. And what A.W. Hamilton's done ever since he's come in to Richmond, Kentucky, is he has the most exciting 40 minutes in basketball. That's what he calls it. They do a full court press. They'll get up in your grill. They'll cause turnovers. They'll score 6 points, 5 points in the span of about 3 seconds and just absolutely make it insane. So if the cards are right come March, they do have that special little ingredient that could maybe lead them towards winning the NCAA tournament. But they had a huge win on Saturday over a UNF team, a North Florida team, who I thought, after playing them, they could potentially win the conference tournament. I mean, they have about 5 or 6 of these tall, lengthy, white kids straight up who just shoot the lights out of the ball. And, that's what Coach Driscoll has done for a long time in Jacksonville. 2 times over the last, I believe, 6 years, they were first in the country in three-point percentage. They call themselves the Birds of Trey. They ended up losing, I believe, by 8 on Saturday at Eastern Kentucky. But they have a really, really good bunch there. And, Stetson will kind of sneak in. They'll probably be 3rd in the conference. Tucker Anderson at Central Arkansas, I'm just going on a rant now. He leads the country for all freshmen. I got this stat today from Sam Fetterman for made 3-pointers. In 2-3 years, he's a player in the league that I could see potentially playing at, say, an Iowa State and just being like an insane 3-point shooter. But there's a lot of talent in this league. Eastern Kentucky, though, they have the ingredient to do something special in the NCAA tournament if they make it there, because they just have that different style of basketball with the full-court press and the up-tempo style of basketball.
Yeah, they certainly can play up-tempo, and we were alluding to it a little bit before with Isaiah Cozart. Leads the country in terms of blocks. He has been so impressive to me, and when it comes to everything that we're going to be seeing on Thursday, certainly you guys over there at Queens are going to be a part of a fun Thursday. We're going to be seeing a lot of mid-major basketball. We were hitting upon the Sun Belt a little bit as well. Are there a few other teams that are going to be on the board for Thursday that you are going to be keeping your eye on, and teams that maybe the casual college basketball fan should take a little bit more of a closer eye on?
So we have Longwood High Point. That'll be a really good one. High Point's been amazing since the start of conference play. I believe they're 10-0 at this point, either 8-0, 10-0, something along those lines. They haven't lost a game in conference play, though. They're picked towards the middle of the league. Alan Huss's first year. Monty Hamilton, Duke Miles. They have Bodo down low. They're another team we played at Queens. We actually beat them on our home court. But they've been playing amazing basketball, and it's just kind of out of nowhere. They'll play a Longwood team who struggled since the beginning of conference play. They had probably one of the easiest non-conference schedules in college basketball, and they've really took advantage of that, beating up on every MEAC team but Norfolk State, stretching it out to a double-digit win streak. But High Point's on their own double-digit win streak right now. They'll try to continue that. 7 o'clock ESPNU. That's definitely worth your eyes. It's going to be a packed house at High Point. They got a lot of money there. They got a new arena. It should be a pretty nice atmosphere. At 11 o'clock, we have a really interesting one on ESPNU as well. We have UCSB against UC Davis. Elijah Pepper, one of the best scorers in the country. AJ Mitchell, one of the best playmakers in the country. So it's going to be 2 of the best players in mid-major basketball facing off at 11 o'clock at Davis. Davis coming off a really tough loss against the UC San Diego team. I don't know who they play on Thursday, but they play on Thursday. That's been playing amazing basketball. They're a transitioning team, so they can't make the NCAA tournament, but they've opened 7-1 in Big West play, and they're smoking teams. This is a good UC Davis team. They should be up there in the top 4 of the league. They beat them by 35 on Saturday, which is just completely out there. UC Santa Barbara was a clear favorite in this league when they brought in all this high major talent, former 5-stars, but they've struggled since the beginning of conference play. They opened 0-3, and every night's pretty much felt like a dogfight for them. So this is a big game on a national stage to maybe quiet Elijah Pepper, get back to their winning ways. So that's a big one. And we also have a big one out in the CAA. They're not the top 2 teams at this moment, but through non-conference, they were the top 2 teams. And it's always fun when these two play because it's a big rivalry. UNC Wilmington will be going to Charleston. Charleston's been playing much better basketball. They did drop 2 games in a row, but they're still the same old good Pat Kelsey Charleston bunch. And they'll try to defend their home court. They went to UNCW a couple weeks ago, and they lost the Seahawks. 2 teams that have the potential to win games in the NCAA tournament. That's on Flow Sports, though. I know many people don't have Flow Sports, but that might be worth the couple dollars for the night.
It's going to be a fun slate on Thursday. We're going to have a whole bunch of games, and Nick, you're going to be a part of one of those. The Queens NC versus Eastern Kentucky game. It's going to be a fun one. I don't think that there's going to be a shortage of scoring there, and there's no shortage of great thoughts from you, my friend. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, you can follow along on Twitter, as always, at N Lorensen, Eastern Kentucky. On Thursday, Bellarmine are homecoming. On Saturday, but it's already been an interesting week in college basketball. You know, we had all that Jeff Goodman news. We had some interesting games on Monday, and it should be interesting Tuesday, Wednesday, leading up to this Thursday slate, and another packed Saturday. So anytime we have mid-major basketball, anytime we have college basketball and drama to add on to it, it's a blast for me.
Oh, it absolutely is. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at @NLorensenSports. Nick does absolutely tremendous work taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, and his time is always appreciated. So big thanks to Nick for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some big time. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by Nick Lorensen. Does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this great game of basketball that we all know and love. Every single time he joins this podcast, he lends such good insights, and always good to be able to get him on board on a day like today where we've got so many of the mid-majors on the card today. We're not going to be finding a lot of top 25 teams, but man, for those that love a lot of steak, you're able to get a lot of it today. So big thanks to Nick for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at UNN_D1. We're going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is in time order with regards to the major conferences, and then the smaller conferences are going to be at the bottom. That's any independent, so looking at you, Chicago State, the Northeast Conference, the America East, the Patriot League, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Atlantic Sun, and the Southland. So that'll keep things orderly and clean, and let's get things started with the game that starts at noon Eastern Time, 9 o'clock a.m. Pacific, 7:35, 7:36 IUPUI. It's on the road facing off against UW Green Bay. UW Green Bay is a favorite of 14 points. Toledo's game is anywhere between 134.5 and 135, and IUPUI has really been putting the PU in IUPUI this season. And last time these two teams played, IUPUI, they did not have a good go of it against UW Green Bay. They lost that game by a count of 68-58. I do think that this is a little bit too high, though, because I do think that with this being a 9 o'clock a.m. Pacific time game, it actually does help out IUPUI a little bit. And you go back to the last time these two teams played, IUPUI actually won the turnover battle in that one, and IUPUI does have a solid player in Jalen Counter. He's able to give you 15 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 35.5% from three. Now, I've been thoroughly impressed by the way that this UW Green Bay team has been able to rise up themselves. As for UW Green Bay, this team has given up north of 71 points just twice in their last 6 games, and north of 71 points just 3 times in their last 10 games. So they've been able to rise up with that regard. You've got a guy, Noah Reynolds, who's able to give you 19.5 points, 4.5 assists for a Green Bay team that all of a sudden has been able to shoot 35% from three-point range. You've been able to have a pair of guys in Foster Wonders, the transfer from Southern Illinois, along with David Douglas, be able to combine for about 17 points per contest. They both shoot about 40% from three-point range. Rebounding is still eluding UW Green Bay, but this is an IUPUI team that they're in the bottom 100 nationally with regards to their points scored on a per possession basis, their points allowed on a per possession basis, their rebound rate, their opponent's three-point shooting percentage. It is all sorts of rough. There is no question about it, but I do think that this is a little bit too stark of a line as well, just because you've got a UW Green Bay team that is in the bottom 125 with regards to total possessions per game. This is not a team that's really looking to push the tempo too much for IUPUI. They also are getting a little bit of positivity with regards to their three-point shooting. Vincent Brady last year was someone that was shooting more in the neighborhood about 35% from three. This year he's been shooting about 23.5% from three. You figured that'd be ticking up a little bit. Quanzi Samuels has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. I don't think there's any question that UW Green Bay is a better team in this spot, and UW Green Bay, they should be able to win this game comfortably, but keep in mind, last time these two teams played, it was a 10-point game. I think that IUPUI holds in there in a very strange early game, so I did set my line at a 13.5. Here at the 14, I'm going to be taking a look at the over. Once again, last time these two teams played, neither team was able to get to 70 points. I think that this is going to be a lower scoring slog, so did set my total 131.5. Looking at the under, and I'm going to be looking to take 14 plus here with IUPUI. 737, 738 on the betting board. Drexel, it's a road face off against Monmouth. Monmouth is a home underdog of 4.5 points. Total on this game is 139.5 to 140. Monmouth is a 1.5 point favorite. Looking at them outright on the money line, Drexel is going to be able to win the battle down low. This is a Drexel team that ranks in the top 20 with regards to total rebound rate, but this Monmouth team can certainly stroke it from three-point range. Xander Rice is one of the best scorers in all of college basketball, shooting 36.5% from three. He's been able to log 21.5 points per game, and though this Monmouth team is outgunned down low, you do have Nikita Kosanatovsky along with Jack Collins, who have been able to combine for about 14 rebounds per game. They've been able to supply the team with a combined about 20 points per game, so I do like what these guys are able to supply. And a big thing for this Drexel team is trying to push this Monmouth team off of the three-point arc because they are so prolific with that regard. This is a Drexel team that, to their credit, they do a good job of being able to guard on the interior and on the outside. Amari Williams has been able to give you 11 points, 8 boards, a pair of blocks per contest, and for Drexel, 28th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, though that does rise to about 33.5% in a road/neutral court environment, more around 26.5% when they are at home. This is a Monmouth team that they also do allow quite a bit from the outside. They're outside the top 200 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but though the Drexel offense has been much better, here in the month of January, they're averaging well north of 70 points per contest in non-conference play. This was a team that was really having a struggle being able to get to 70, so we have seen quite a reversal there, but you do have to wonder if things are starting to fade just a little bit with regards to this Drexel offense. They've now been held below 70 points in 3 out of their last 6 games. It is a Drexel team that still only shoots about 33.5% from 3, very efficient with 11 turnovers per game outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, but other than Williams, the only other guy that is able to give you north of 8 points per contest is Justin Moore. He does give you more with 13 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists for a Drexel team that has been able to do a much better job of being able to flow their offense, but I do think that this Monmouth team is going to be able to hold in there, though this is a bunch that they do rank right around about 200th or so in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This has been a squad that has been able to rise up a little bit as the season has went along for Drexel when it comes to being able to guard down low. They have been able to do a very solid job with that regard, but they do have some big home and road splits, allowing opponents to shoot 40.5% from 2-point range at home. That goes to about 49% in a road/neutral court environment, and this is a Monmouth team that they allow opponents to shoot 46.6% from inside the arc at home, more like 53.5% away from home. So I do think that Drexel starting to calm down a little bit with their offense. Drexel, I do think, is going to suck the life a little bit out of this game against a Monmouth team that is outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. So I think that this is going to be a slow slog. I said I told 135.5, diving in on the under, but with Monmouth, made them the 1.5 point favorite. So looking at Monmouth on the money line and going to be taking a look at the under. 739, 740 on the betting board. Georgia State plays us at Appalachian St. App State is a favorite of 5.5 points. Totals between 145 and 145.5. With App State, I did make them a favorite of 6.5 points, so I'm going to be looking to lay the number. It's an Appalachian State team that has been one of the best in all of college basketball at just being able to guard teams. They are a top 35 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're going to be going up against a bunch of Georgia State that has done a good job of being able to take care of the ball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, a top 50 team in all of college basketball. But the problem with this App State team is that their defense travels. They are, I believe, number 6 in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis in a road/neutral court environment. So this is going to be a very big battle for a Georgia State team that they're not necessarily prolific from three-point range. I do like what they've been able to get out of DeJuan Odom. He's been Mr. Do-It-All for the team, being able to dole out 4 assists, giving you a double-figure amount of points, shooting in the mid to high 30s from three-point range to be able to go along with about 4 to 5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Jaden Turner down for what has been your main guy on the glass. He's been able to supply the team with 10 points, 9.5 rebounds per game, but need a little bit more than 32% three-point shooting out of this team. Meanwhile, for App State, this has not been a team that's really bottomed from three-point range. They're shooting 66% the free throw line, 31.5% from three-point range. Where they're going to be looking to dominate this game is down low, as this team combines for about 7 blocks per contest. In terms of blocks per game, this is a top 10 team in all of college basketball. With Appalachian St, they're also in the top 80 with regards to rebound rate in a road/neutral court environment. This actually ascends quite a bit as well into the top 45 with regards to their rebound rate, as you've been able to have Donovan Gregory have all sorts of versatility. 3.5 assists, 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Trevon Spillers is able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Your top shot blocker on this team is Justin Abson, 7 points, 7 boards. Really like what he's able to bring to the table. And this is an App State team that, just by committee, they do a relatively solid job of being able to own the paint. They've got 4 separate guys that give you at least 4.7 rebounds per game. Though this team doesn't necessarily shoot it too well from three-point range, Gregory is someone that is able to shoot 40% from three-point range. Appalachian State just does a really good job of not getting out of sorts. Meanwhile, this is a Georgia State team that they themselves, with regards to their defense, has been getting cooked recently. They have given up at least 76 points in each of their last 3 games. Other than Turner, they really don't have a lot down low. This is a Georgia State team that is clocking in right around about 193rd with regards to their rebound rate, and you just take a look at this defense and the way that they have been getting barbecued. Granted, it is an App State team that doesn't necessarily make a lot of threes, but they're well outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they're 261st in terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that Appalachian State goes on the road, gets the job done. I do think that they're going to be able to hold down this Georgia State team. I did set my total 142.5. Looking at the under of the App State, made them a 6.5 point favorite, so want to lay up to 6 with them. 741, 742 on the betting board. Campbell, it's the road face-off against Elon. Elon is a favorite of 2 to 3 points. Total on this game is 144, and with Elon, I made them a favorite of 4 points. So I'm going to be looking to lay this number. It is a Elon team that's outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but the biggest issue that Campbell has right now is that they're a very top-heavy team. Gotta love what Anthony De La Rosa has been able to bring to the table. 17.5 points, 6 boards, shoots about 32% for 3, but delivers about 1.6 steals per contest. He just needs more guys to be able to step up for the team, and you've been able to get a little bit of that in Lorenesen Visterius. He's been able to give you about 10.5 points, 4 boards, shoots 42% for 3, and has one difficult name for me to pronounce, but that's that past these 2 guys. You really don't have anyone else on the roster that gives you north of 8.2 points and 4 rebounds per contest for a Campbell team that they're in the bottom 50 with regards to total possessions per game. They are doing a very good job of being able to guard the three-point arc. Campbell is allowing opponents to shoot in that neighborhood about 32% from three-point range, top 95 team in the country, but in a road/neutral court environment, this does slide away. They're allowing opponents, when they're away from home, to shoot north of 36% from three-point range. If you look at their offense, they are averaging about 13 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. Now, this is an Elon team that's outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage when specifically at home, allowing opponents to shoot 37.9% from the outside, but this is an Elon team that is a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of venture. You don't have that one guy that's going to go down there and is going to get you a whole bunch of rebounds, but you've got a whole bunch of guys like TK Simpkins, Max McKinnon, Rob Higgins, Nick Dorn. All 4 of these guys have been able to pull together for about 45 points per contest. None of these guys really give you north of 3.1 assists per contest, but McKinnon, Simpkins, along with Higgins, they combine between the 3 of them for about 8.8, 8.9 assists per contest, and McKinnon and Higgins both shoot 39% from 3. Elon's bread and butter is really being able to stroke it from three-point range. We have seen that slip a little bit. They're now shooting about 36.5% from three-point range, but this has still been one of the more prolific teams from the outside in all of college basketball, and at home, they are shooting about 41.5% from three-point range, with Campbell really slipping up with regards to their three-point shooting defense away from home. I do think that allows Elon to be able to get them here, and I do think that this is going to be a Campbell team that's just going to be playing a little bit too slowly and doesn't have enough three-point shooting to take advantage of the kryptonite of this Elon team. Now, for Elon, they themselves have scored 72 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, and as a matter of fact, last time these 2 teams played, it was Campbell who got the job done at home, 78-68 in that game. You saw Campbell did have a little bit of an issue being able to take care of the ball with about 14 turnovers, and I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a sloppier game as well. I do think that both of these teams shooting right around about 33-34% from three, much like they did the last time, is very sustainable, but I do think that the possessions are going to be a little bit more at a premium here, so did set my total at a 140. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. I do think that Elon gets their revenge after last time out they lost by 10 to this team, made them a 4-point favorite, willing to lay the number, and going to be taking a look at the under. 743, 744 on the betting board. UNC Wilmington hits the road face-off against Charleston. Charleston is a 4.5-point favorite. Your total between 155.5 and 156, with Charleston made them a favorite of 2.5 points. So here at the 4 to 4.5, saw some 5.5s earlier as well. I'm going to be willing to take the points with UNC Wilmington. This is just a Charleston team that doesn't do necessarily one thing amazing. Now, they still have great depth. They've still got 9 guys that are able to give you north of 12 minutes per contest. You still have a team of guys that doesn't turn the ball over. They only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per game. For Charleston, they rank in the top 35 nationally with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Problem for them is that Wilmington is even better at being able to take care of the ball. They're a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. And last time these two teams played, it was Wilmington who got it done by a count of 78-69 on their own floor. In that game, Charleston did shoot just 8 of 29 from three-point range. I expect them to be a little bit better in this game. They were able to win the rebound battle with Ante Bedazovic being able to chip in there, 27 points, 11 boards, and overall for the season he averages about 13 points, 7 boards, but Tizerian White, he in that game had 17 points, 7 boards, and I think that that's a little bit more sustainable as he's been able to give this team about 20.5 points, 6.5 boards from three-point range at 6'7". He's shooting north of 40% from three-point range. It is a Wilmington team that they themselves have been having a little bit of a tough time with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 150 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, so both of these teams not quite what they were defensively a season ago, but Shaquem Phillips, KJ Jenkins combining for about 26.5 points per contest. Jenkins shooting about 39.5% from three. I do think it's very big, and I do think that for UNC Wilmington, it's just very key that they do a better job of guttering the arc than College of Charleston. Charleston has been rough with their three-point shooting defense there. 263rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Wilmington right there, 280th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But for Wilmington, they allow opponents to shoot just 31.5% from three-point range at home in a roadside shoot court environment. This does balloon up to 36.5% as Wilmington really has not played a lot of home games thus far this season. And for this Wilmington team, you can tell that they're giving you a much better effort on defense at home rather than on the road, giving up about 9.6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. This is meanwhile a bunch in College of Charleston that you just have a bunch of pieces that they're okay. Like you've got Rain Smith, who's a solid three-point shooter. He's able to give you double figures. CJ Fulton has been able to give you about 4 assists per contest, but he's scoring less than 5 points per game. It's been just a very random hodgepodge of guys. Ben Burnham is able to give you about 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And this is a Charleston team that they do a solid job on the glass, but they don't do an amazing job on the glass. They're about 67th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but they're not generating the same amount of turnovers as they did a season ago. I think that Wilmington, much like they did the last time around, they're going to be able to win that turnover battle by just being able to take care of the ball. That'll keep them lively in this game. I do think that Charleston is going to be able to get a little bit of revenge, but I think that this is going to be a tight game throughout. I do think that both of these teams are going to have plenty of shots. I set my total at 156.5. I'm going to be looking at the over, and with Charleston, made them a 2.5 point favorite, so we'll take 4+ here with Wilmington. 745, 746 on the betting board. Old Dominion hits the road face off against Marshall, and Marshall is a 8.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 152.5. So Marshall is a 7-point favorite. I'm actually going to be willing to take the points with Old Dominion. Last time these two teams played, Old Dominion completely punked Marshall in the second half. Marshall, I believe, was leading by 1 point at the half, and then things went completely down the toilet bowl from there. And this is an Old Dominion team that they're outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've really sped themselves up. They're now more around 100th in the country with regards to total possessions per game. Typically under their coach and Jeff Jones, they are playing much more slowly, but Jones, he's out for the season due to some health issues. You wish him absolutely nothing but the best, but his team does have 2 guys that are able to take over the game, Chauncey Jenkins and Vashawn Alouette, who have been able to combine for a little bit over 33 points per contest, nearly 6 assists, shooting between the two of them about 35% from three-point range. They shoot about 66% at the free throw line, and the one thing that Old Dominion has done a much better job of this season is that they've been able to generate turnovers. Now, they are sort of gambling for turnovers at this point because if they don't get a turnover, they're allowing opponents to shoot it from three-point range very well. They are overall 311th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That balloons up to 37.8% in a road slide shoot court environment. Tournament, going up against a Marshall team that typically they do a good job of being able to generate turnovers, but in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis this season, Marshall has not been that at all. Marshall is only generating a turnover on about 16.5% of possessions. That ranks 230th in all of college basketball. Old Dominion is 101st in the country with this regard. It is a Marshall team that has been looking to Obiana Unchale Killian for a little bit of everything. 6.5 boards, 16 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, and then you've been able to get some relatively good production down low out of Nate Martin, who's been able to give you about 9.5 rebounds per game, and they should be able to handle Old Dominion on the glass. This Old Dominion team, with regards to their rebound rate, they're around 29th in all of college basketball. Marshall, meanwhile, they're clocking in more around 143rd, but for Marshall, I just fear that they're not going to be able to take advantage of that bad Old Dominion outside shooting defense. They're only shooting 30.5% as a collective. Camden Kerfman, he's starting to pick it up, shooting 34% from three to be able to give you a double-figure amount of points, so that's been encouraging for the team. But at the same time, you look at the last time these two teams squared off, it was a Marshall team that could only score 66 points. In that game, they went 7 of 32 from three. I think that they're going to shoot it a little bit better in this ordeal, but you also have Marshall lose a turnover battle in that game as well, and other than Onchale Killian, you had a lot of guys that really struggled in that game. So I do think that Old Dominion is going to be able to hold in here. I do think that Marshall is going to be able to shoot it better from three-point range as well, which is why I did set my total more around a 155.5. So going to be looking at the over, but getting north of 8, going to be willing to take the points with a struggling Old Dominion bunch. 747, 748 on the betting board. Delaware, it's a road face-off against William and Mary. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, but you get both, and you also get 4.5 points with them as they are the home underdog of 4.5 points to Delaware. Total on this game between 142.5 and 143.5, and with Delaware, I did set them as a favorite of 6 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. William and Mary has been just absolutely atrocious with their defense. They're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. When it comes to William and Mary, much of it is because they just don't have their main man down low, and Noah Collier, who they were really banking on, top rebounder from a season ago, has played just 3 games this season, and then it looked like they were going to be able to get some good versatility. Jack Karzinski, he's been out for really the last 12 or so games. Right now, their main man down low has been someone that's a bit undersized and 6'5" Chase Lowe, 12.5 points, 6.5 boards. He's done an admirable job there, doesn't shoot any threes. And then you do have from the outside Glenn Dorsey, shooting about 40% from three, shoots 90% at the free throw line. But for this William and Mary team, among guys that are averaging north of 7 points per contest that are fully healthy, because many have been dealing with injuries to Sam Hoppett. When he's out there, he's able to be added to this as well. But among their guys that have played at least 16 games this far this season and are out there on the floor, you've got 2 guys that are shooting north of 69% the free throw line. That's a little bit of an issue. You've also got a Delaware team that they've been able to do a nice job of just protecting the ball and doing the little things. They shoot north of 72% the free throw line. They turn the ball over 10.5 times per contest, and Gerald Drumgoole has been able to give you about 2 assists, 13 points on 37.5% three-point shooting. Calvin Riley is able to shoot about 37.5% from the outside, going up against a William and Mary team that they just cannot guard the arc to save their lives. 298th in all of college basketball is this William and Mary team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I will say this, they're allowing opponents to shoot 32% from distance at home, more around 38% in a roadside shoot-to-corner environment, but they do go up against a Delaware team that has been good at being able to guard the arc. 125th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but for this William and Mary team, even though they do a better job of being able to guard the arc at home, this team is still 359th in the country with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis. And with Delaware, you do have Christian Ray down low, who's able to give you 8+ rebounds per game. It's not an amazing Delaware team in terms of rebound rate, about 178th in all of college basketball, but they should be able to win that battle against a William and Mary team that they've got a negative rebound rate when they are at home. Couple that with the fact that you've got Jelon Trent, who's been Mr. Do-It-All for this Delaware team. 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 9 points per contest. Really love what he's able to bring to the table, and I do think that the lack of defense for William and Mary just going to continue to take hold. It's a William and Mary team that I talk about the lack of defense, but it's really been the offense that has been letting them down recently. This squad has been able to exceed the 70-point plateau just once in their last 7 games, so that has been ghastly. Meanwhile, you've got a Delaware team that they themselves have stepped up to the plate with regards to their defense, giving up 71 points or fewer 3 of their last 4 games. William and Mary is outside the top 325 with regards to total possessions per game. Question is, how efficient is the defense going to be? I think that it's going to be not very. I think that this could be a game that results in some late game following as well. So I did set my total 144, looking at the over, and with Delaware, want to lay up to 5.5 points. With them, so laying the number 749, 750 on the betting board. Florida National is going to be playing out to Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech is an 8-point favorite. Your total is 142.5. Louisiana Tech set them as a 7-point favorite, so going to be taking a look at those points with International. This Florida national team has been one of the best in all of college basketball, being able to generate turnovers. A top 5 team with regards to turnovers for us on a per possession basis, with Terry O'Dean being the main guy. It's 3.9 steals per contest, leads all of college basketball, but he leads the team in a lot of categories. It's actually Javante Hawkins who's your top scorer at 12.8 points per contest. Hawkins shoots 42.5% from 3, but past that, Dean leads in pretty much every category. 4.5 assists, 4.5 boards, 12.6 points per contest, and that's a big issue. Florida International outside the top 300 with regards to rebound rate, going up against the Louisiana Tech team that is a top 85 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and a big reason why Daniel Pacho has been able to average a double-double down low and helps out a Louisiana Tech team that is 36th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Isaiah Crawford in the backcourt has also been a nice cog for this team at 16 points, about 6 boards, shoots 41.5% from 3-point range for a Louisiana Tech team that a lot of people attribute them with their good defense, but how about the way that this team has been able to light it up from 3-point range? They are shooting a little bit north of 36% from the outside, and they go up against a Florida national team that they're one of those teams that they just gamble for turnovers, and when you don't come up with a turnover, you allow a wide open look from 3-point range. Florida National is 361st out of 362 D1 teams with regards to their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Louisiana Tech team that they've been able to shoot about 34% from 3-point range on the road compared to about 37.5% at home, but I do think that they've got more than enough cogs to be able to get it done in this ordeal. It is a Florida International team that they just need more out of guys like Jonathan Ibar, who comes in from North Florida, to be able to man things down low. And this Louisiana Tech team, they've been able to get hot. They have won 5 straight games. This team in regulation has now allowed fewer than 70 points in every one of those games if you look at regulation and regulation only, because they gave up 69 points to Liberty. Before that game went to overtime, they won 80-76 in overtime. Meanwhile, it's a Florida National team that they've been all over the place with regards to their offense. 72 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this team has certainly been surrendering the points, as they have now given up at least 77 points in 3 out of their last 5 games. So a circumstance where I do think that for Florida National, they're going to fall in this one. I think we've went a little bit too far, because I do think that for Florida International, a team that they've been able to bust through with at least 72 points in 4 out of their last 6 games as well, they are going to be able to find a way to be able to find some points against Louisiana Tech. I do think that Louisiana Tech is going to be able to get it done, but they themselves do have a little bit of liability with regards to the outside. They're turning the ball over about 12 plus times per contest, and Louisiana Tech in a roadside shooting environment does allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from 3-point range. So set my line at 7. You're at an 8. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Florida National, and I did set my total at 145 with the way that Louisiana Tech has been eating up a little bit more with their offense. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take 8 plus here with Florida National. 751, 752 on the betting board. Towson plays us to Northeastern. Northeastern is an underdog of 6 points. Total on this game 128.5. Set Towson as a 5-point favorite, so here at the 6, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Northeastern. With Towson, this team has really been able to rise up with their defense, but it's hard for them to be able to win by margin with the fact that they are one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball now. Towson has been a much better defensive team. They are 49th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Northeastern, 349th, but for Northeastern, they're actually allowing a lower 3-point shooting percentage when they're in a roadside shoot-to-corner environment rather than when they are at home, and this is still a Towson bunch that they're still trying to find their footing with regards to their offense. 224th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so they are scoring 15.6 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home. This is a Northeastern team that you do have Chris Doherty, who should be able to do a solid job down low. It's not quite Towson. Towson is a top 35 team in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Charles Thompson being able to supply 8+ rebounds per game has been big, but when it comes to this Northeastern team, they're actually averaging 4.4 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. If you look at road offenses in college basketball, this Northeastern team is actually in the top 50 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and they are able to do it a little bit more on the interior as well. This has been a Northeastern team that they really haven't shot it too amazingly from 3-point range, so they do have to punch it inside. When Joe Pridgeon is healthy, as he's been banged up all season long, he's able to supply the team with about 10 points per contest for Northeastern. This team is shooting in a roadside shoot-to-corner environment 56.2% from 2-point range. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball. And I do think that that's going to take it out of a Towson team a little bit, that while they've got some good rebounding, they do allow a little bit on the interior to really go past. They don't allow you to get a second opportunity, but they do allow you to have that clean first opportunity. And for the Towson team, it's not like they're going into flamethrower mode from three-point range. They have been able to get more turnovers out of Nenda Tark ever since he has become eligible. He's been able to do a solid job coming over from Coppin State, supplying 11 points, 5 boards, but he only shoots about 31% from 3. Towson as a whole, they shoot 33.5% from the outside, and on top of that, this is a very slow, controlled Towson team that's based around defense, and if there's a late game fouling situation, this team as a collective shoots 63.1% at the free throw line, and out of their top 6 scorers with regards to points per game, one of these guys shoots north of 69.2% at the free throw line. That would be Tyler Teata, who's been able to give you about 10 points, 3.5 boards, shoots 35% from 3-point range, but for Northeastern, though this defense, it has been rough. They have given up at least 72 points each out of the last 4 games. This team is able to knife the ball down low. I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job against the Towson team that last time they played Towson, they went on the road and Towson lost to Northeastern 67-59 due to the fact that Northeastern was able to do a nice job of being able to pound the ball down low. They shot north of 60% on their 2-point shots, and Towson went 19 of 30 at the free throw line. I think that Northeastern is going to be following that same game script. I did think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog once again, so I did set my total out at 127. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under, and at 6, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northeastern, set my line at 5, 753, 754 on the betting board. SMU plays those to Tulane. Tulane does find themselves as an underdog of 9 points. So now this game is 157. I also made my line on this game 9, so a little bit of wait-and-see mode. If we can get down to an 8.5 or less, going to be willing to lay with SMU. 9.5 or more, it's going to be a take for me on Tulane. A couple of very early openers I was seeing had this game more in that neighborhood of about a 9.5 to a 10. So if we could get there, I'd be willing to take the points with a Tulane team that they very much are a little bit more of a top-heavy team, and this is going to be a battle between the Tortoise, and the hair would not necessarily do SMU justice, as they're more just barely outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, but the controlled, I guess you call it, insert whatever like mid-tempo animal you want here, but this is a Tulane team that they are playing at warp speed. They're playing at a top 15 rate with regards to total possessions per game, and this is a bunch that they get really good versatility out of Zion James along with Kevin Cross. James is able to give you 14 points, 3 assists, shoots 40% from 3, and then Cross, he just stuffs every single section of the stat sheet. Nearly a block, 7.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 17.5 points per game, and then he, James, Jalen Forbes, along Kobe King. All 4 of these guys, all 4 of your top scorers, give you at least 1.5 steals per contest. So this team is essentially a heat-seeking missile. Now where Tulane does go wrong is that they certainly do give up the three-pointer. Our opponents are shooting north of 36.5% from three-point range against them when Tulane is in a roadside church corner environment. They do a much better job at home, and for SMU, this has been one of the best three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, they're third in all of college basketball with this regard. They're top 25 team in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do fear that Tulane might be able to do a relatively solid job. They'll be able to force a few turnovers on them. You've got Tariq Phelps, who's been able to give you about 14 points per contest, but really other than Chuck Harris, who shoots north of 40% from three-point range, he's been able to supply the team with 12 plus points per contest. It is a squad that they do have a few issues with regards to just being able to knock down some of those open shots, so they might not be able to take advantage of this Tulane team as much as they would like. Now, this is an SMU team that as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of team with regards to rebounding, and Tulane, they're a little bit rough with regards to hitting the glass. Tulane 338th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. SMU more around 57th in the country with having Samuel Williamson, who's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. Keon Ambrose Hilton, whenever he's been out there, as he's dealt with injuries throughout the entirety of his career, but has been relatively healthy this year. He and Tariq Smith have been able to combine for about 10 boards per contest, and between the two of them, about 2.5 blocks per contest. And then you've got someone like BJ Edwards, who doesn't score a lot with only about 4.5 points, but gives you 3.5 assists. When you need him to shoot threes, he's been able to shoot about 43.5% from the outside, but this team does turn the ball over a little bit over 12 times per contest. It is a Tulane team that they have shown that against slower teams, they can have their tempo really halted, as in that game against North Texas, that was 70-56. Against Charlotte, that was 75-71. So I do find that to be very fascinating. Meanwhile, you do have a SMU team that they themselves have now given up 68 plus points in each out of their last 3 games. Meanwhile, they themselves have gotten to at least 72 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So this is a total that I did set at a 159. I do think that SMU is going to be cranking up their tempo. I do think that they get a lot of second and third chances against Tulane. I do think that Tulane is going to be able to get their tempo in this one. So I did set my total 159, looking at the over. Anything north of 9, going to be taking a look at the points with Tulane. 755, 756 on the betting board. Oakland is playing us at Robert Morris, and Robert Morris is an underdog of 9.5 points. Your total is 145 to 145.5. Set Oakland as a 9-point favorite. So you're a 9.5. It is my buy point on Robert Morris. Robert Morris is still a little bit of a rough three-point shooting team, but Oakland is in the bottom 30 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. That should be able to get this team right back online. As for Oakland, this team just year in and year out, they can never guard the arc. I have no idea how. I have no idea why, but it always just blows my mind. Well, Robert Morris, they themselves have been a little bit, shall we say, lackadaisical with regards to their defense from three-point range. Opponents are shooting well north of 34% against them, though they're actually only shooting about 33.1% against them in a roadside shoot-to-score environment, closer to 35% at home. For Oakland, they should have a little bit of advantage on though with having Trey Towson being able to give you about 8 rebounds per game, but this is a Robert Morris team that is relatively even up with regards to their rebound rate. You've got Stephon Walker, you've got Marquise Hastings, who've been able to give you about 14.7 rebounds per game, and Hastings is now shooting 39% from 3. Robert Morris's big issue has been the turnovers. They've been turning the ball over north of 14 times per contest, and typically that leads to run-out layups for the other team, as Robert Morris, in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, 291st in all of college basketball, only rises by about 1.6 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home, and this is an Oakland team that they really don't get any sort of boost at home with regards to their defense. They're 318th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis, but they are giving up 12.7 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-scoring environment. I think that that's the biggest negative home and road split that we've got in all of college basketball as of right now with regards to efficiency. This is an Oakland team that they do have solid offense. Blake Flampman has been able to give you 12.5 points. He shoots 37.5% from three-point range. All in all, it is an Oakland team that they do shoot in that neighborhood of about 33.5% from the outside, while their defense, it certainly does decline while they're at home, but their offense, in terms of overall efficiency, does increase as well. Ironically enough, their three-point shooting percentage actually goes from about 34.1% when they're in a roadside shoot-to-score environment down to about 33.6%. At home, they must be having Rocket Watts shooting too many threes because he just can't hit the broad side of the barn. That said, Oakland is about 44th in the country with regards to points scored on a per-possession basis, scoring 17.1 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-to-score environment, going up against a Robert Morris team that has someone in Justice Williams who's been pairing up with Josh Corbin to be able to give you about 6 assists per contest. The turnovers have been unsightly, but Oakland not a team that really rips the ball away too much. And to the credit of Robert Morris, the defense has been a little bit better. Now, their defensive numbers are very much warped by the fact that they play that double overtime game against Detroit and they play that single overtime game against Fort Wayne. If you take a look at regulation and regulation only, this team has given up 74 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. Meanwhile, this is an Oakland squad that they themselves have played a pair of games that have went to overtime recently. If you look in regulation and regulation only, this is also an Oakland team that has given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, but this is also an Oakland team that when they're at home, they're really giving up the points. When they're away from home, they actually lock it down a little bit more on defense. I did set my total at 155. I think Robert Morris is going to hit plenty of threes, and I think that Robert Morris is going to really struggle with an Oakland team that they are much more efficient with their offense at home. So I'm looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take 9.5 or more here with Robert Morris. 757, 758 on the betting board. Troy is the road face-off against Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is an underdog of 5 points. Total on this game is 147.5. But Georgia Southern made them an underdog of 8.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Troy. Troy has been one of your better cover 8 teams in all of college basketball. And for Georgia Southern, this is just not a trustworthy bunch. They have been dealing with injuries all season long. They now have Eugene Brown, the transfer from Ohio State, back in the fold, but he hasn't necessarily contributed a ton for the team as it's been the Tyron Moore show. 15.5 points, 3 assists on 42.5% three-point shooting for Mr. Moore, but this Georgia Southern team, both in terms of offensive and defensive efficiency, it has been an almighty struggle for them. For Georgia Southern, 262nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, so I will say for them, they're averaging about 20 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-scoring environment, but they're 21st in the country with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis. They just got absolutely nothing down low for the team. Carlos Curry was your top rebounder a season ago. Just has been an afterthought. He's been dealing with either injuries or just maybe stepped away from the team in general because he wasn't getting minutes towards the beginning part of the season. It was just a very strange situation in general. You've got Avante Parker, who's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game, and that's about it for this team. As in terms of rebound rate, this team is well outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, they are clocking in 325th in all of college basketball, going up against a Troy team that I'm not going to call them supreme down low, but you know what? They're about 80th in the country with regards to the rebound rate, and they've got some good backcourt pieces as well. As I like the duo of Christian Eugene along with Dayton Conway. These two guys have been able to combine for about 26.5 points per contest. With Eugene, he shoots 43.5% from three-point range for a Troy team that they do get a little bit loose with about 13.5 turnovers per game. That's right on par with what Georgia Southern has been doing, but down low, this has been a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of approach for this team. Of your top 6 scorers, 4 of them give you north of 3.9 rebounds per game. You've been able to get some relatively good production out of Amir Muhammad, who's able to give you 2.5 assists, 10.5 points per contest, as each of their top 3 scorers also give you at least 2.5 assists per game. And this has been a Troy team that has been one of the best teams at being able to rip the ball away. Meanwhile, it's a Georgia Southern team that they themselves don't necessarily do a good job of being able to generate turnovers, because while Troy is a team that is in the bottom 100 with regards to the way that they protect the ball, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this has been one of the biggest heat-seeking missiles in all of college basketball, ranking 51st in all of college basketball. This is a Troy team that I do think goes on the road. They trounce a Georgia Southern team that doesn't have anything down low and has a tough time taking care of the ball. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8 with Troy, set them as an 8.5 point favorite. And with regards to this total, did set it at 152.5. Got a Georgia Southern team that's just getting absolutely completely cooked on defense, and it's much better on offense at home. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Troy. 759, 760 on the betting board. Hofstra plays those to Stony Brook. Stony Brook is an underdog of 7 points. So last game is 142.5 with Stony Brook. I did make them the underdog in this ordeal of 8.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Hofstra. With Hofstra, defense has been a wreck. They're outside the top 175 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do like the fact that they are going up against a Stony Brook team that just cannot guard the arc to save their lives. For the Stony Brook team, they are 321st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, with opponents shooting 40% from three-point range in a roadside church court environment. Now Hofstra, they're actually allowing a higher three-point shooting percentage at home to opponents rather than away from them. They're allowing opponents to shoot right around about 35.4% from three-point range at home, but the big two of this Hofstra team is going to be the best two in this game, as you've got Charleston Dunbar and Tyler Thomas being able to combine for north of 40 points per contest. Between the two of them, they're shooting right in that realm of about 40% from three-point range. And for Stony Brook, you've been able to get some good production out of Tyler Stevenson Moore, who's been able to give you about 15 points per contest, and Stony Brook for themselves, they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. Both of these teams do a good job protecting the ball. Neither of these teams really going to be forcing a lot of turnovers, so we should see a lot of clean possessions here. Dean Knoll, Aaron Clark, pair of guys that were out of the fold 8 seasons ago, they've come back in good form, combining for about 4 assists. Knoll gives you 1.7 steals per contest, while Clark is able to give you about 13 points per contest, and Keenan Fitzmaurice is a 7-footer that's able to pop threes. But for Stony Brook, you don't have a ton down low for this team. You got Charles Mado, who's been able to give you about 5.5 to 6.5 rebounds per game. Andre Snoddy has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and Stony Brook should be able to win the battle down the line, 238th with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, this is Hofstra team that they've been relatively rough at 305th, but it's not like they're going to be completely dominant down low, which is where you do want to be hurting this Hofstra team. As Charleston Dunbar is your top rebounder with 7.3 rebounds per game. You also have Jaco Fritz, the 6'10" stretch player who's able to give you 6 points, 5.5 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but I flat out think that Hofstra is going to be the more efficient offense in this one with the way that Stony Brook gives up the arc. I feel like this is just a very bad matchup in general for them, and it's the last time these two teams played. Stony Brook was on their home floor. They lost by a count of 80-74. As in that game, Hofstra shot 10 of 27 from three-point range. I do think that we could see a little bit of a replay there, as Hofstra lost the rebound battle in that one. They played even up with regards to turnovers, and I think that the Hofstra three-point shooting leads them to victory once again. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slower tempo game than it was the last time around, but this is a pretty stark adjustment considering both teams got to 74 last time around. I did set my total at 144.5, so you're at the 142.5, looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8 points with Hofstra. 761, 762 on the betting board. It is UW Milwaukee hitting the road face-off against Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne does find themselves as a 4.5 point favorite. Your total is between 161.5 and 162.5. Did set my total at 162. Between these two numbers, I personally would rather have the 162.5 under. It is a UW Milwaukee team that has been ascending with regards to their tempo, but this is still a bunch at overall for the season. They are clocking in well outside the top 75 with regards to total possessions per game, and this is a Fort Wayne team that I do think that they could get back to basics with regards to their defense. They have been a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, and they do have 4 separate guys that give you at least 13.3 points per contest. Andre Roberts, Quentin Morton Robinson combined for 27 points, right around about 3.5 steals, with Morton Robinson shooting 41.5% from 3. Then you've got Jalen Jackson shooting 46% from the outside, 15 points per contest, and then Rasheed Bello who comes in from Wisconsin's lone D2 university in UW-Parkside. He has been the main constant for this team. 4 assists, 15.5 points, 2 steals. He just does all the little things for a Fort Wayne team that always has been having a tough time taking care of the ball, but this season they are a top 35 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they do get to go up against a UW-Milwaukee team that's outside the top 320 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. UW-Milwaukee, they are 347th in all of college basketball as well with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and for UW-Milwaukee, I just don't know if they're going to be able to do their part with regards to this total because Fort Wayne has been a really good three-point shooting defense at home, allowing opponents to shoot 28.4% from the outside, and really outside of BJ Freeman, you don't have a lot of consistency for this team. With BJ Freeman, he's been able to do a nice job supplying the team with north of 18 points per contest. He's been able to give the team right around about 6 boards, 4 assists, shooting 38% from three-point range, and I will say Eric Pride is shooting darn near 40% from the outside, but bad say, you don't have anyone else that gives you north of 5 points per contest and shoots above 27.5% from the outside. Kentrell Pullian has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, but for Fort Wayne, even though this is not a tremendous team down low, you do have Eric Mulder, who's able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per game, going up against a UW-Milwaukee team that they're about 137th with regards to rebound rate. Guys like Faison Fields and company, they're able to be a whole is greater than some of its parts with regards to rebounding. Fort Wayne, they're about 355th in the country with regards to rebound rate, so second and third chances should be had for UW-Milwaukee, but this is also a UW-Milwaukee team that they themselves, with regards to their defense, it has been all over the place, giving up 80-plus points in now pretty much 4 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, in regulation, because they have played a few games that have gone to overtime, they've been all over the place with regards to their offense, and this has been a Fort Wayne team that has risen up a little bit more with regards to their defense. 75 points for fear surrender in each of their last 2 games. It's been a little bit of a rut for this Fort Wayne team. They did have a pretty long losing streak in the month of January, but if you look at the overall season numbers, this is still a Fort Wayne team that's clocking in 79th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that Fort Wayne, even though they're going to give up some second chances, they're going to do a good job of being able to guard the arc. That's going to allow them to be able to control this game against a UW-Milwaukee team that they just have been a little bit strange. They've been a little bit out of sorts, but I do think that with UW-Milwaukee, now having BJ Freeman back in the fold, with this UW-Milwaukee team being able to find their sea legs a little bit more, even their losses, they've been relatively nip and tuck. They just lost a double overtime game against Oakland. They're going to be able to hold in there against a Fort Wayne team that does come in losers of 4 out of their last 5. So it's a very interesting ordeal, to say the least. I might total at a 162. I do think that 162.5 just went a little bit too far. So looking at the under, but I think that UW-Milwaukee holds in there from within. We'll take 4.5 or more with them, set them as a 4-point underdog. 763, 764 on the betting board. Coastal Carolina, it's a road face-off against James Madison. James Madison is a favorite of 19 points, and your total on this game is 153. I set James Madison as a 20-point favorite. At 19, I'm going to be willing to lay this number. James Madison has been so dominant in terms of all facets of basketball, and after they had a just hellaciously hot start to the season from three-point range, they have fallen back to earth. They are now shooting only about 34% from three-point range, but even with this, the defense has been the constant for this team. James Madison, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, we all want to talk about the three-point shooting, but they're at 16th in all of college basketball in this realm, and it's a James Madison team that is one of the better teams in all of college basketball at being able to generate turnovers. They get to go up against a bunch that's had a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball in Coastal Carolina, north of 12.5 turnovers per game for them. This is a James Madison team that, in terms of percentage of possessions that do end up in a turnover, they're a team that ranks in the top 55 in all of college basketball in this regard, going up against the Coastal Carolina team that they're okay on the glass. Gianna Ojiaka has been able to do a solid job being able to give you about 10 or so rebounds per game when Kevin Easley has been out there because he's been a little bit banged up. He's been able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game as well, but TJ Bickerstaff has been able to do a nice job of being able to give this team a little bit of rough and tumble down low for James Madison. It's a James Madison team that is now about 82nd in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and it's a Coastal Carolina team that they just struggle to be able to have good flowing offenses. On top of the turnovers, they shoot 63% at the free throw line, 30.5% from 3. As a matter of fact, each of your top 4 scorers for Coastal Carolina are shooting 63.5% or worse at the free throw line. That is just absolutely incredible. They do have a 36% three-point shooter, and Jacob Meyer has been able to give you about 13 points per contest, but I do think that James Madison should be able to win this game rather handily. It's been a Coastal Carolina team that has been completely out of sorts with regards to their offense. This has been a team that has scored now 71 points or fewer in regulation in each of their last 4 games. Their last game went to overtime, so when they hit overtime, they were able to reach that 71-point plateau, but For Coastal Carolina, I also just don't think that this team is going to be able to hold up defensively as well. Coastal Carolina, well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. You got Terrence Edwards for James Madison, who's able to give you 17 points per contest, shoots the ball from three-point range. Noah Friedel is able to give you double figures. As a matter of fact, you've got 5 separate guys for James Madison that is able to give you double figures. And James Madison, they are 11th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. This Coastal Carolina team, right now, they are clocking in about 173rd, allowing opponents to shoot in that neighborhood about 33.5% from three-point range. So I do think that James Madison going to be able to do a nice job on this Coastal Carolina team. For Coastal Carolina, I do think that there's a chance that they can get to 70 here, but I do think that James Madison going to take it to a Coastal Carolina team that has been looking to play a little bit more up-tempo. For Coastal, they've given up at least 75 points in now 4 out of their last 5 games, and this is a James Madison team that they are capable of going off for a 90 spot on any given night. As a matter of fact, they have broken 75 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So, did set my total 156. I'm looking at the over with James Madison. Set them as a 20-point favorite, so I'm also going to be willing to lay the number with a James Madison team that's in the top 40 with regards to total possessions per game. 765, 766 on the betting board. Detroit plays us to Cleveland State. Cleveland State is a 7.5-point favorite. Your total on this game going to be getting it anywhere between a 146 to a 145.5. And with Cleveland State, I'm going to be willing to lay it. I set them as an 11.5-point favorite. Now, Detroit is a little bit more respectable now that they've got Jaden Stone back in the fold. But, I mean, I don't know about you, but Taylor Swift says that Detroit is feeling 22 because they're 0-22 thus far this season. And you just have to wonder how much it's snowballing for the team because you've got Stone, who's been able to give you 19.5 points, 6 boards, shooting 31% from 3. But as a whole, Detroit, they're in the bottom 30 in all of college basketball in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 50 team with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. They're 26.3% three-point shooting percentage. That's one of the worst in all of college basketball. Eduardo Del Cadilla is right now the only guy on the roster other than Stone that's been able to give you north of 4.2 rebounds per game. So in terms of rebound rate, Detroit is about 348th in the country, going up against a Cleveland State team that they do have some vulnerability down low, but they're still about 248th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. It's a Cleveland State team that does a good job of being able to take the ball away as well. Top 75 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Their top 6 scorers, 5 of them have been able to generate at least a steal per contest. You got Jason Woolridge, who's been able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range, and then you've been able to get 43% three-point shooting and 8 points per contest. Tevin Smith as well, while Tristan Iranura has been able to do it all. 6.5 boards, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, 18.5 points per contest, while Tay Williams chips in there 13 points per game along Drew Lauder. This Cleveland State team has become a very complete team. They're a relatively mid-tempo team that when they need to play defense, they're able to do so. They have given up fewer than 70 points in 2 of their last 3 games. When you need them to crank up the offense, they're able to do so as well. They've gotten to at least 75 points in 3 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this Detroit team has just become an absolute disaster and a joke on defense. This team has now given up at least 78 points in all but 1 of their last 6 games. I don't think that they're going to do their part with their offense either, because in regulation, this team has now scored 71 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. So very rough ordeal here, to say the least, for Detroit. I just cannot bank on the fact that they're due for one in this game, because they have been due for one for a very, very long time, and I think people need to come to the reality that this team just stinks. I set the Cleveland State as an 11.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. So my total 143.5. I think the Cleveland State just completely locks down this Detroit team, so looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Cleveland State. 767, 768 on the betting board. It is Hampton on their facing up against North Carolina A&T. A&T is a favorite of 6.5 points. So on this game is 155.5. I said A&T as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Hampton. These 2 teams squared off a few weeks ago, and that was a game in which North Carolina A&T, they went on the road and they were able to get the job done by a count of 81-80, and I think that's going to be another tight one. Both of these teams are well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Both of these teams have their warts on offense, and for A&T, they are going to have the best scorer in this game. That'd be Landon Glasper, who's been able to give you 21.5 points. That's the top 10 mark in all of college basketball. Only though shoots about 31.5% from three-point range. Been able to get good production out of Keeman Shell to be able to help him out. A little bit over 4 assists, 11.5 points per contest, but doesn't necessarily shoot it great from three-point range. And for A&T, to their credit, they're now getting a little bit more down low. Ever since Jason Murphy has been able to come back in the fold, he's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but is the only guy on the roster that is giving you north of 4.2 rebounds per game, going up against a Hampton team that it's not like they're great on the glass. They're well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate as well, but Kyrese Mullen, he should be able to win that battle down low. He's been able to supply the team with about 8.5 to 9 rebounds per game. First time around, he was limited limited due to foul trouble, only played 21 minutes, had just 4 boards in that contest, but Hampton still was able to win the rebound battle. Hampton just wants the fact that for North Carolina A&T, they were able to shoot north of 50% from the floor, and they were able to do a solid job, A&T was, of being able to win that turnover battle, and that's an issue that you do have for Hampton, but now you've got Jordan Nesbitt looking like the Jordan Nesbitt of old. He was the top scorer for Hampton last season. He missed the first 5 or 6 games of the season and clearly was not himself to begin the season. Now you take a look at what he's been able to do, and he's back to his full form. He's been able to give the team 14-plus points in 5 out of the team's last 6 games, generating a little bit over a steal per contest. He has thrown in there at least 4 assists, and now each of the team's last 7 games as well. Granted, it's come with a lot of turnovers, but that's able to elevate a team that they do shoot about 72% at the free throw line. They shoot about 33.5% from the outside as well, going up against the North Carolina A&T team that is allowing more points per possession than this Hampton team, though. I mean, either way you look at it, both of these teams outside the top 3 are in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Hampton 300th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. For North Carolina A&T, they're currently clocking in 286th, but for A&T, they allow opponents to shoot 39% from 3 away from home. So I do think that this is a Hampton team that they are going to have a little bit of a tough time shooting it from 3-point range in this one, with A&T now being the home team. That said, I do think that we're going to see those numbers iron out just a little bit, and I do think that Hampton is going to be able to hold in there with now having back in the fold a fully healthy Jordan Nesbitt. So set my line at 5. I'm going to be willing to take 6.5 in this ordeal, and I did set my total at a 153. Both of these teams are rough with regards to their defense, but I mean, both of these teams are not great with regards to their offense, turning the ball over a little bit too much in the case of Hampton. For A&T, shooting less than 42% from the floor, so going to be looking at the under and taking a look at the points with Hampton. 769, 770 on the betting board. Texas State plays those to South Alabama, and South Alabama is a 2-point underdog, and your total on this game is 142 to 142.5 with South Alabama. Did set them as a 2.5-point underdog. I'm willing to lay the number with Texas State. This is a Texas State unit that just has not been themselves this year. They are outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but speaking about a team that's not themselves, typically this is a South Alabama team that they're relatively under control and they're relatively solid on defense, but they're now hovering right around 100th with regards to total possessions per game, and they are 288th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, interestingly, they're giving up about 3.6 points fewer per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than at home, but I do think that for Texas State, they're going to be able to do a little bit of a better job defensively here. It's a Texas State team that is actually giving up a full point more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment, but South Alabama outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate. Texas State more around 150th with having a pair of guys in Brandon Love along with someone who's been banged up throughout the season, but is back at the fold, and Davion Sykes being able to combine for about 11 rebounds per game. Sykes has been able to also throw in there a little bit over a steal, 8 points per contest. This team has been able to do a little bit of a better job ever since he's been back in the fold in terms of just being able to guard down low, though this has been a Texas State team in which their big bugaboo is that they are now giving it up quite a bit from the outside. Texas State is allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range about 35.5% from 3 at home. On the road, their 3-point shooting defense has actually been really good at 29.3%, but at home, that's been a big giant issue, but they're not facing off against the South Alabama team that necessarily does a great job of bombing it from 3-point range. They lost darn near everything from a season ago, so it's been Isaiah Gator, the D2 transfer, who's had to come up and has had to be the top scorer for the team with about 15.5 points per contest. South Alabama as a whole, they're shooting about 33% from the outside, and while South Alabama is a better team with regards to their defensive efficiency when they're away from home, their offense, it certainly does take a tumble, as for South Alabama, they're scoring about 17.5 points less per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot-to-score environment rather than when they are at home. Now, Texas State is 336th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, but at the very least, they're not dealing with an injury like South Alabama is to Maxwell Land, who's one of their top overall scorers. You've got a Texas State team that has been able to get quite a bit ever since you've been able to get into the fold. The Army transfer in Colton Benson as well, as shooting 42% from 3, 8 points per contest, was one of those transfers that was barred from playing towards the beginning part of the season for Texas State. 14 turnovers per game has been rough, but they face off against the South Alabama team that doesn't generate a lot of turnovers, and for South Alabama, they've now given up 80 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, they themselves have gotten to at least 70 in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it's a Texas State team that they're just having a tough time being able to put the ball in the basket. Last time this team was able to exceed the 72-point plateau, you have to go back 5 games ago, and this is a Texas State team that they've been able to exceed the 72-point plateau in just 2 out of their last 12 games. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. I did set Texas State as a 2.5 point favorite. I think that they win from within, so one to lay the number in. Did set my total at 142.5. Seeing the 142 out there, that's a maximum one to go over, but going to be one to go over to go along with Texas State. 771, 772 on the betting board. South Dakota State is going to be playing us in North Dakota State. North Dakota State is a 9.5 point underdog, and your total is between 152.5 and 153 with North Dakota State. I did set them as an underdog of 8.5 points, so here at the 9.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points. With North Dakota State, this team is able to put up points aplenty. The problem has been the defense, but in this case, their defense is right on par with South Dakota State's defense, as they both absolutely stink. Both of these teams are outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. For North Dakota State, 353rd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And then for South Dakota State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 334th. Now, I will say for South Dakota State, they're giving up 13.9 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside church-corner environment. But it's brutal both ways in which you slice it. And I do think that this is going to be one of those ordeals where you do get a nice little bit of a shootout. And the question becomes, do you get enough possessions for an over? I did set my total at 152.5, so 153 is my buy point on the under because both of these teams are outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game. I do think that North Dakota is going to be able to remain a little bit lively in this game just because they do have Andrew Morgan, who stands right around 6'10". He's been a lazy big man with only giving you about 4 rebounds per game, but he does have that size. And then I love the versatility that you've got with Bowden Scumberg along with Damari Wheeler-Thomas, who have been able to combine for about 28 points. You've got Wheeler-Thomas shooting 40% for 3 with 3 assists per contest. Scumberg is able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Both of these teams have been relatively brutal with regards to their rebounding. Both of these teams are outside the top 150 with that regard, though. I will say William Kyle for South Dakota State, he's been able to supply the team with about 6 rebounds per game, and the most versatile player out there on the floor, that is Zeke Mayo. Zeke Mayo has done absolute wonders for the South Dakota State team. He's been able to supply the team with 6+ rebounds, 18.5 points, throws in there north of 3 assists per game, and with the Jackrabbits, they're more around about 162nd in the country with regards to rebound rate. For North Dakota State, this team is clocking in right in the neighborhood about 250th, so they do have a little bit of an advantage there, but both of these teams have been rough with regards to the way that they do guard the arc, and for South Dakota State, you know that this team is going to be able to go up, light it up from 3-point range. Luke Capel, Charlie Easley, both give you 11 points per contest. They're shooting about 36% from 3-point range, but for South Dakota State, 316th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. North Dakota State, they say, hold my beverage because they're 356th with this regard. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of made shots in this game. But once again, I do think that for both of these teams, they're not going to do a good job of being able to generate any second chances. This is going to be very much a make it and take it sort of game in which it's going to be very much slowed down. Neither of these teams necessarily play with a lot of tempo, which is why I did set my total at a 152.5. I'm going to be willing to take a look at the under. North Dakota State, if you look at them in regulation, they have scored fewer than 72 points in 4 out of their last 5 games because they also played a game that involved 2 overtimes against UMKC and a single overtime against Omaha. Meanwhile, this has been a South Dakota State team that has been a little bit better with their defense, giving up fewer than 70 points in 2 of their last 3 games. So looking at the under, but being able to get what we're getting with North Dakota State, anything of 9 or greater, going to be taking a look at those points with the Bison to go along with the under. 773, 774 on the betting board. Idaho St hits the road face-off against Northern Colorado, and Northern Colorado does find themselves as 9.5 point favorites. Your total on this game between 147 and 147.5. I made Northern Colorado the 10-point favorite, so this is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Northern Colorado team that has by far the best player out there on the floor. St. Thomas, who's been able to give you 20 points, 8 boards, 3 assists, generates a little bit over a steal per contest for a Northern Colorado team that has just been absolutely prolific with their offense. Now, they're terrible with their defense. They're outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it's Northern Colorado. They are a top 50 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and I think that they're just going to be hard to guard for a bunch in Idaho State that, even though they play slowly, it doesn't mean that they necessarily play great defense. They are well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. It's an Idaho State team that I think is going to get a little bit outgunned on the glass, and this Idaho State team is about 221st in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as they do have Braden Parker, so he will give you about 13.5 points, 5.5 boards per game for a bunch that they shoot about 69.5% the free throw line, 31.5% from 3-point range. Malik Arrington has been able to give you 4.5 assists, 10 points per contest, and Miguel Tomley is able to shoot about 36.5% from 3-point range. But when it comes down to it, I do think that for Idaho State, they just need a little bit more down low to be really able to take hold and be able to stay in control of this game. Idaho State about 222nd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. And for Northern Colorado, this is a team that does rank in the top 185 with that regard as well. You've got someone in Riley Abercrombie. He is not of relation to Fitch, but he stands 6'9". He's shooting about 35% from three, supplying the team with about 4.5 rebounds per game, and all of a sudden, you've been able to get a little bit more of DeJure Reeves, who is someone that's been a little bit in and out of the fold throughout this season, but has been able to shoot 38% from three-point range, giving you north of 14 points per contest. I do like what he's able to bring to the table. That's a big Robin for St. Thomas, and it's been a big reason why this Northern Colorado team has been one of the biggest constants in all of college basketball with regards to their offense. Northern Colorado, in the month of January, got to at least 77 points in all but one of their games. This is a Idaho St team that they have been having a relatively good renaissance with regards to their defense, as they have now given up fewer than 70 points in 3 of their last 5 games, but we've noticed against the likes of Eastern Washington and company, these up-tempo teams, they just are unable to hold up. They sort of get thrown into that vector. They get playing at their speed. I do think that Northern Colorado is going to be able to dictate the terms of this game. I set my line at a 10, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 9.5 with Northern Colorado, and also made my total 150, so going to be taking a look at the over as well. 775, 776 on the betting board. Weber State, it's a road face-off against Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona is a 7-point underdog, and your total on this game is between 140.5 and 141. With Northern Arizona, I did set them as a 7-point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to lay it with Weber State. Weber State has been able to do a relatively solid job of traveling, and there's no question about it, they've got the best player in this game. That would be Dylan Jones, who's averaging 19.3 points, 10 boards, 2 steals, 5 assists on 35.5% three-point shooting, and in a nip-and-tuck game, you're able to feel good about Weber State at the free throw line. As a whole, they're shooting about 76.5% at the charity stripe, with each of their top 4 guys shooting at least 75% at the free throw line. This is a Weber State team that does a nice job not turning it all over, 9.9 turnovers per game, top 35 mark in all of college basketball with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and for Weber State, they're 82nd in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, while Northern Arizona outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, for Northern Arizona, the offense is much better at home rather than in a road/shoot-court environment. They've been able to score more than 17 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than when they are away from home, but they still don't have Carson Town in the fold. He has been missing all season long, was their leader in rebounds and assists a season ago, so they've been looking at Liam Lloyd to dole it out. He's been able to give you about 3 assists, 7 points per contest, and Trent McLaughlin has been able to shoot 35% from 3, 15.5 points per game, but other than Carson Basham, who's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, this team really doesn't have anything down low. Weber State is an okay rebound rate team. Northern Arizona, they're well outside the top 250 with that regard, and for Northern Arizona, they're giving up a lot of open looks with regards to the low post. Northern Arizona actually a very good three-point shooting defense at home, allowing opponents to shoot just 26.2% from three-point range, so that might throw a little bit of monkey wrench into what Steve Verplanken is looking to do. Verplanken for this Weber State team has been able to give you about 12 points, shoots about 40% from three-point range. That said, when it comes to this Northern Arizona bunch, they are 343rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this is a Weber State team that they themselves are about 351st with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well, but Northern Arizona just doesn't really have anything down low. This is a Weber State team that has done a relatively solid job of being able to guard the arc themselves, allowing opponents to shoot 33% from 3. That's a top 150 mark in all of college basketball. Other than Oakland Ford, who's been able to give you about 3 assists, 10 points per contest, you really haven't seen the backcourt of this Northern Arizona team be able to rise up, especially with Northern Arizona only shooting about 67% of the charity stripe, and this Northern Arizona team scoring 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 6 games. I do think that Weber State going to be able to do a relatively solid job here, even though they themselves have struggled a little bit with their defense, giving up north of 72 points in 3 of their last 4 games. I think that they get back online against a Northern Arizona team that has had all sorts of issues themselves. Did set my total at a 141. I do like the under because I do think that Weber State going to have to go inside a little bit more and won't get as many of those threes, but I do think that Jones still dominates this game. So looking at Weber State laying the number and the under, 777, 778 on the betting board. South Dakota plays also North Dakota. North Dakota is a favorite of a point. Total is 148.5. I feel like South Dakota should be the favorite of 2 points. I'm going to be looking at South Dakota right on the money line. With South Dakota, this team has been able to do a nice job of being able to let it fly from three-point range. Overall, this team is shooting from three-point range in that pocket of about 35.9%, with Caleb Stewart was out of the fold a little bit towards the end of December into January, being back, giving you 15.5 points per contest, shooting 41.5% from the outside. And then you've been able to get 41% three-point shooting out of Max Birchhill as well. That's big for a South Dakota team that has had a little bit of a rough go of it with their defense, and really both of these teams are not necessarily stalwarts with regards to defense. South Dakota, 330th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a North Dakota team that is more around 290th. I will say this about North Dakota. They are giving up about 8.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they do leave home, and they do have BJ Omot, who's been able to give you 17 points per game. But for North Dakota, the team only shoots about 31% from the outside. This is a South Dakota team that they leave themselves very, very vulnerable from the outside. As for South Dakota, they are allowing opponents to shoot 39.1% from three-point range away from home. That goes down to about 30.5% at home, but all in all, they're still about 315th overall with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. This is a North Dakota team that they do leave themselves open to giving up a lot of threes, as well as they're about 275th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they actually give up far more threes at home rather than in a road/return environment. That is part of the reason why I did set my total at 148, so you're at the 148.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under, but with this North Dakota team, you've had Tyree Iheanacho come back, and has been a nice facilitator for the team. About 3.5 assists, a little bit over a steal, about 14.5 points per contest, but with not having a lot down low, I do think that's going to be rough for them going up against Liat Thione, who's able to give you 10 plus rebounds per game. This is the South Dakota team that, while they do a lot of things not so great, they're a top 125 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. North Dakota, they're clocking in more around 156. They need something more out of Sonsei Sartse, who's able to give you 10 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, as Amir Kulajovic is right now the only guy in the roster that's giving you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. To the credit of North Dakota, they are only turned the ball over about 10.7 times per contest, and North Dakota right now riding a nice 4-game win streak. They've been able to do a solid job putting it together recently, but they still have given up 76 plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it is a South Dakota team that they themselves have been stuck in the mud with regards to their offense. The only game out of their last 5 in regulation that they've been able to exceed the 70-point plateau in was their double overtime game against Denver, but I do think that South Dakota going to do a nice job hitting some threes, and that'll allow them to be able to win this game at home. Set my total 148, so here at the 148.5, diving under, I'm looking at South Dakota outright on the money line. 779, 780 on the betting board. UMKC plays us to Denver. Denver is an underdog of 2 points. Total on this game is 154.5 to 155. I did set this total at a 157. I'm looking at the over. Denver, top 40 team in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Bottom 50 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Going up against a UMKC team that just has not been themselves on defense. You do have Jamar Brown giving you 14 points, 6 rebounds per contest, but for Kansas City, under Marvin Menzies, you'd expect this to be a slow, controlled team, really looking to just D up in general for UMKC outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. I will say at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 28.6% from three-point range, while this is a Denver team that they're allowing opponents to shoot 41.5% from three-point range at home, more like 36.5% from distance in a road/return environment. But I just don't think that this UMKC team is going to be able to hold up in this game. They've been dealing with Elon and Becca Jr. not getting a lot of minutes. I don't know why. He was a good rebounder for the team last season. They've slashed his minutes to like 15 minutes per game. Now they're looking at Cameron Foss to be able to give you a bit more, shooting 43% from 3, 11 points, 5 rebounds per contest. He's been relatively solid here down the stretch, but I do think that this game is going to be controlled by Denver because they've got the top scorer in all of college basketball. That'd be Tommy Bruner. Bruner has been able to give you 26 points, 4.5 assists. He is shooting 40.5% from three-point range. And for Bruner, he actually shoots better from three-point range when he's away from home. So even though the UMKC team has done a good job of being able to guard the arc at home, I just don't think that that's going to hold up against Tommy Bruner. Taki Tanemo has also been able to give you 8.5 boards, 17 points per game. He shoots 35% from three-point range. Denver as a whole, 9.5 turnovers per game with their up-tempo style. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And I do think that this UMKC team is just going to be a little bit outgunned down low. UMKC actually 47th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Denver, though, they're a top 100 team with regards to their rebound rate when they are away from home. Jackson Brentley is a big reason why. 3 assists, 5.5 boards, 10.5 points. He shoots about 34% from three-point range. And you got added shooting with about 41.5% from distance, 7.5 points out of Isaiah Edu Ekinara. He's been able to rise up for the team and become a nice little ancillary scorer that is able to come in and give the team a few made threes. I do think that Denver just overwhelms the UMKC team that while they've been at home, they've been a relatively solid defense, but I do have my question marks as to whether or not that's going to be able to maintain. They have now given up 75 plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is a Denver team that they just continue to rack up the points. This Denver team was able to get to at least 78 points in all but one of their games in the month of January, and for this Denver bunch. They have been held below 74 points just twice since the beginning of the month of December. I think that they're getting theirs, and I think that they get the job done on the road. I'd like Denver outright on the money line, set them as a 1-point favorite, set by total 157. It's also looking over 781, 782 on the betting board. Tennessee State plays us Morehead St. Morehead State is a favorite of 3 points. Your total is 136.5. So Morehead State is a 3.5-point favorite. So I'm going to be looking to lay the 3. Don't want to really go too much further than that, but this is a Tennessee State team that, even though they do have some nice reinforcements on the way, they've been able to have Jason Thibodeau be able to give this team north of 2 blocks per contest after he began his career at Florida. This is a Morehead State team that is just really, in my opinion, the best defense out in the Ohio Valley. It is a Tennessee State team that has been able to rise up a bit more when they've been at home. They're about 162nd in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 7 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. But this Morehead State team has been a top 50 team in the country with regards to rebound rate for Morehead State. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're clocking in about 124th, and they've got Riley Minix, who's got good versatility. A little bit over a block and a steal, 19 points, 9 boards on about 31% three-point shooting. But as a whole, Morehead State, they're shooting about 34.5% from the outside. We've got a pair of guys in Jordan Lathan, Khalil Thomas, combined for 27.5 points. These two guys both shoot north of 38% from three-point range. Drew Thelwell's been able to give you about 6 assists to, in that neighborhood, about 2 turnovers per game. Morehead State has always had a little bit of an issue with regards to taking care of the ball, but this is a Tennessee State team that they don't necessarily force a ton of turnovers. You've been able to have E.J. Bellinger, Keenan Hodges combined for 22.5 points. Both give you 5.5 boards, and Bellinger shoots about 36% from the outside. And when it comes to the Tennessee State team, they've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the outside shot, but this is a Morehead State team that it just feels like they've got so many pieces that you need to guard that it makes it very difficult. Even though Tennessee State, they are a team that is 65th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, I think there's going to be a regression here. They do allow opponents to shoot 35.5% from 3 away from home. That goes down to 21.7% at home. I understand getting a boost from your home crowd, but that's just a unsustainable split, in my opinion. Meanwhile, Morehead State, they allow opponents to shoot 36% from 3 at home, 29% away from home. I do think that Morehead State going to be able to do a solid job here. And when it comes to this Tennessee State squad, Marcus Fitzgerald just has not been himself from the outside this year, shooting less than 30% from 3, dipping in there about 2.5 assists, 10 points per contest. He has been in and out of the fold all season long. That's been a little bit of an issue, and I do like Morehead State, a team that has given up fewer than 70 points in pretty much every single game that they have played this month, to be able to keep it going. Last time these two teams played, Morehead State got a 78-68 win. That was a game in which Tennessee State actually shot 7 of 19 from 3. Morehead State just 5 of 16 from 3, but Morehead State won the turnover battle, and they were able to take control of this game. I do think that for Morehead State, they're going to be able to do something very similar, and I do think that the three-point shooting numbers iron out a little bit. So, going to be taking a look at Morehead State laying the number, and with regards to this total, I set mine at a 135.5. I do think that Morehead State, team that's outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, slows it down. Looking at the under and willing to lay it with Morehead State. 783, 784 on the betting board. Omaha plays us to St. Thomas. St. Thomas is a favorite of 2 points on the road. Total is 141. I said St. Thomas is a 5-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number for St. Thomas. The team is back to playing very slow and very under control. They're outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, but unlike in past years where St. Thomas was pretty ghastly on defense, this team has been able to do a really good job of just being able to guard up this season. They don't force a lot of turnovers or anything, but they're 120th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're pretty much giving up the same amount of points per possession in a road/shoot-to-court environment rather than at home. If you look specifically at the points that they allow on a per possession basis in a road/shoot-to-court environment, they are a top 50 team in all of college basketball, and they go up against a squad in Omaha that they've really been looking to slow things down. Omaha is outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, and it is a Nebraska-Omaha team that is much better with regards to their offensive efficiency at home rather than on the road. They're scoring 21.3 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, but it's a bit of a top-heavy team. Markel Sutton has been able to give you 13 points, 6 boards, and then Frankie Fiddler, 39% three-point shooter. That's able to give you 19 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists per contest. For a team that as a whole, they only turn the ball over about 10.3 times per contest, but the bread and butter of the St. Thomas team is not being able to generate turnovers or anything like that. The bread and butter of this team is just being able to play good, sound defense, not allowing a whole bunch of second chances, and being able to cut off that three-point arc. For St. Thomas, they allow opponents to shoot about 33.8% from three-point range. It's nothing great. It's nothing terrible. With Nebraska Omaha, they're about 197th in the country with this regard, but they do allow opponents to shoot 37.8% from distance when they are at home. And for St. Thomas, even though you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, you've got a lot of good versatility versatility with this team, as you've got guys like Kendall Blue along with Parker Jorkland who have been able to give you double figures. For Blue, he shoots only about 30% from three. Jorkland more around 34% from the outside, but Raheem Anthony be able to supply the team with 4.9 boards, 2.9 assists, 12 points per contest. Having that versatility is very big for a St. Thomas team that, for lack of a better term, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts with them. The St. Thomas team has found a way to be able to score at least 73 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it's an Omaha defense that has really been faltering recently. They have now given up at least 72 points in each of their last 6 contests. I do think that St. Thomas going to be able to do just enough to be able to get some offense going, especially with Omaha giving up the arc at home. But I do think that St. Thomas, with the way that their defense has traveled, they're going to be able to get the job done in this ordeal. For St. Thomas in regulation, they have now given up fewer than 70 points in 2 of their last 3 games, and I think that they're going to be able to do so once again here. So by total 137, looking at the under, and willing to lay it with St. Thomas, made them a 5-point favorite. 785, 786 on the betting board. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin plays FC Utah Valley. Utah Valley just find themselves as a 6.5-point underdog with your total 140, and I did say Utah Valley as an underdog of 8.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with a Stephen F. Austin team that is in the top 20 once again nationally with regards to turnovers force on a per possession basis. Utah Valley has just been so cold with their 3-point shooting all season long, shooting 26.2% from the outside, bottom 10 team in the country with regards to road 3-point shooting percentage. Though you do have Trayvon Doris, who's been able to do a nice job giving the team right around about 7.5 rebounds per game, and for Utah Valley, they need to make up for their lack of 3-point shooting with rebounding, and they rank about 260th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. They go up against the Stephen F. Austin team that they are going to give up some open looks if they don't generate turnovers. But for Utah Valley, they themselves are turning the ball over a little bit north of 12 times per contest. You've got Drake Allen, Caleb Stone Carwell giving you combined about 24 points in the neighborhood, about 5 assists per contest as well, but they're not necessarily impressive with that regard. It is a Stephen F. Austin team that, despite the fact that they do go so much for turnovers as well, they're also a top 70 team with regards to their rebound rate as well. They don't necessarily shoot it great from 3-point range in their own right. They're shooting about 33.5% from 3-point range, with Day-Day Hall being the only guy that's generating for the team double figures. He's scoring 10.7 points per contest, and he's been out of the fold the last few games. Would not be surprised if he's missing this game as well. But guys like AJ Kajuse, who's been able to give you about 3 assists per game, Matt Heyman, who's been able to chip in there about 9.5 points. He's shooting 39% from 3-point range. They've all been able to step up as a collective. You've got Nana Atibo Asiko, who's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game, and this is a Stephen F. Austin team that they just play as one cohesive unit. You don't have one guy that's trying to put up massive stats or anything like that. Just have a whole bunch of guys. They're able to do a nice job of just executing their role, and this is a Utah Valley team that's just went completely dry with regards to their offense. This team has scored fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games, playing against some shoddy defenses along the way as well. Meanwhile, this is a Stephen F. Austin team that they have been able to get things going with regards to their offense, 79 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. Well, they certainly have been surrendering it on defense. They have given up at least 75 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So, interesting ordeal here. I do think that Stephen F. Austin going to be able to take hold of this game. Utah Valley needs to attack Stephen F. Austin from the 3-point line. They're just not going to be able to do so. So, I did set my line at 8.5. I'm willing to lay it with Stephen F. Austin, and made my total 144.5 with the way that Utah Valley's been unable to shoot the 3, and with Stephen F. Austin being able to rebound the way that they do for second and third chances. I do think that they're going to be able to get this total over, so looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin. 787, 788 on the betting board. It is Appalachian Christian playing against the Tarleton St. And Tarleton St is an underdog of 1.5. Total on this game is 141 with Tarleton St. I did make them an underdog of 2.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5 with Appalachian Christian. Appalachian Christian, one of the best teams in all of college basketball, being able to generate turnovers, top 40 team with this regard. Now, for Appalachian Christian, this team has not been good on the glass. They are outside of the top 300 with regards to their rebound rate, but Tarleton St, they're another team that's in the top 40 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. If you had the old Spider-Man gif of 2 Spider-Mans pointing at each other, that'd be Tarleton St and Abilene Christian. The only difference is Abilene Christian plays a little bit more up-tempo. Both of these teams have their difficulties being able to stroke it from 3-point range. For Tarleton St, they shoot about 29% from 3. Abilene Christian in the low 30s with this regard. Is a Tarleton St team that has the best rebounder in this game. That would be Keandre Gaddy, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, 7 boards per contest. But both of these teams are looking at generate turnovers. Both of these teams give up quite a few turnovers. Both of these teams give up the three-point arc as well. I will say for Abilene Christian, their three-point shooting defense has been a little bit worse than that of Tarleton State over the years, but they've been able to really improve with this regard this year. Abilene Christian last year, a lot of opponents to shoot north of 38% from three. This year, that's down below 33% from the outside. And Tarleton State this season, 296th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I do think that that's going to be the big difference in this game. For Abilene Christian, you've been able to get some good production out of Arion Simmons, who's been able to give you about 6.5 boards, 13.5 points per game. And Ali Abdu-Diba has been able to chip in there 15.5 points. Not an amazing three-point shooter, but 35.5%. That'll cut it for this team. It's an Abilene Christian bunch that's turned the ball over about 13 times per game, but having someone like a Hunter Jack Madden being able to give you about 12.5 points per contest, even if Abilene Christian is going to be a little bit outgunned down low, their improved three-point shooting defense, I think, is going to be massive in this spot. You've got an Abilene Christian team that has been pretty consistent with their offense, 71+ points in 3 of their last 4 games. This is a Tarleton State team that they themselves have been able to get to that 70-point barrier in each of their last 4 games. Last time these two teams played, Abilene Christian lost on the road to Tarleton 79-71 in a game where both of these teams went a combined 15 of 33 from three-point range. For Tarleton State, they and Abilene Christian both had 9 turnovers in the game. Tarleton State won the rebound battle, but I do think that this time around, Abilene Christian going to be able to take a little bit more hold with regards to the three-point shooting percentage defense. I think that that's going to be able to win them this game, and I think that you get a relatively high-scoring game, much like the first time around. So by total 144.5, looking at the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 2 with Abilene Christian. 789, 790 on the betting board. Nebraska plays host to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. Seeing a pick'em line out there as well. Totals between 144 and 144.5. Last time these two teams played, Wisconsin went into flamethrower mode from three-point range and completely ran Nebraska off the court. I do think that we're going to see something a little bit different here. I did set Wisconsin, though, as a 4-point favorite, so I do think that you're going to see Wisconsin take hold once again. I'm going to be willing to lay the very small number. Last time these two teams played, Wisconsin won 88-72 on a day where they went 13 of 26 from three-point range, and Nebraska went 12 of 26 from three-point range. Both of these teams were just hellaciously hot from three-point range, and both of these teams have their liabilities with regards to three-point shooting defense. Wisconsin outside the top 200 with that regard, but certainly I think that they're going to cool down a little bit from that. Now, what Wisconsin does a very good job of is being able to take care of the ball. They're always a top 50 team with regards to field turnovers on a per possession basis, and they go up against a Nebraska team that, without question, they've been a better defense at home rather than on the road. Nebraska allows opponents to shoot 32% from three-point range at home. When they are away from home, this does ascend to about 35.5% from distance, but this has been a Wisconsin team that has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to travel all season long. It's a Wisconsin team that they're not great with regards to their defense, but they're only giving up about 4 points more per 100 possessions in a road/shoot scoring environment rather than at home. They're about 134th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And with this Wisconsin team, what has been a big renaissance for them, what they've been able to get down low. Last year, Wisconsin was outside the top 150 with regards to rebound rate. This year, this team has been able to climb into the top 25. Tyler Wall, Stephen Krull have been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game, and with Krull, he just continues to shoot like 51% from three-point range. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of a fall off there for a Wisconsin team that actually has A.J. Soar only shooting about 32% from distance, but has been able to give the team 16 points per contest. Outside of Krull and Wall, you really don't have anyone else that gives you a whole bunch of rebounds, but these two guys have been dominators. Going up against the Nebraska team that you have a little bit more disbursement with regards to your rebounding. You've got a trio of guys in Juwan Gary, Bryce Williams, and Brink Mass, who have been able to combine for about 19.5 rebounds per game at Mass. 13 points per game at 6'10", shooting 35.5% from three. And Nebraska as a whole, they're shooting about 36.5% from the outside. Lincoln is a really good home court environment. The fans are really going to show out for this game. This has been a Nebraska team that's been able to score about 13.4 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than in a roadside shoot scoring environment. And you do take a look at those three-point shooting splits for Nebraska. They shoot about 37% from three at home, closer to 34.8% in a roadside shoot scoring environment. But Wisconsin actually shoots better from three-point range on the road rather than at home. I do think that Wisconsin going to be able to do a solid job in this ordeal, and even though Wisconsin has been able to get to 70 plus points in all but 2 out of their last 14 games, this is still a Wisconsin team that they're still playing relatively slowly. I'm not saying that they're playing at a snail's pace or anything like that, but in terms of total possessions per game, Wisconsin is still hovering right in that neighborhood of about 338th with regards to total possessions per game. That's one of the slowest marks in all of college basketball. I do think that the three-point shooting defense is going to be a little bit better in this one, and I do think that we see a lower scoring game than we saw the first time around. So I'm going to be willing to take Wisconsin in the spot, made them a 4-point favorite, but also did set my total at a 144. So here at the 144.5, loan under to go along with Wisconsin. 791, 782 on the betting board. UT Arlington, it's the road face-off against Southern Utah. Southern Utah is a favorite of a point. Total on this game is 158, and with Southern Utah, I did set them as a favorite of 2 points. points. So I'm going to be one to lay the one with Southern Utah. This has actually been a team that has been covering north of 66% of their games this season. It's been quite remarkable to watch them, and it's a Southern Utah team that is sort of just cobbling things together at this point under first-year coach Rob Jeter. They've had Dominique Ford, who's been built for tough, giving you about 17 points per contest, shooting 35% from three. And Southern Utah, just to put it frankly, they don't do one thing great. They shoot about 30.5% from three-point range. They do only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, but for Southern Utah, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this team clocks in right around about 184th in all of college basketball. Though I will say, in a roadside shoot-scoring environment, they score the approximate amount of points per possession as they do when they are at home. For Southern Utah, they're 289th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They actually give up more points per possession at home rather than away from home. But the one thing that UT Arlington does that really concerns you, they turn the ball over nearly 15 times per contest. They're a bottom 40 team in the country with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, it's more like 16.5 turnovers per game. They should be able to win the battle down low. Shamar Wilson, DeJuan Gordon have been able to combine for about 16 boards, 24 points per contest, and Philip Russell, ever since he's been back to the fold, has been able to give the team 15 points. He's able to shoot about 33% from three-point range, but he's sort of been in and out of the fold recently for the team, but Kai Williams has been able to shoot about 44% from the outside, going up against a Southern Utah team that, they've been having their warts with regards to their overall defense, but the one place where they've been able to excel is being able to guard the arc. They are 48th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They go up against a UT Arlington team that, well, they have been anything but that. For UT Arlington, they are 341st in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 39.6% from three-point range. I do think that this is a solid spot for Southern Utah to be able to go out there, get the job done. I did set this Southern Utah team as a 2-point favorite, so you're at the one. I am going to be willing to lay this number, and when it comes to this total, I'm going to be taking a look at an under as well. I do think that even though Southern Utah, they do allow a little bit more when they are at home, this is a squad that is going to be able to do a solid job against a UT Arlington team that it's just a case where I don't have enough faith in them to be able to hit enough shots and be able to come up with enough clean possessions to do their part. So looking at Southern Utah laying the one, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under 793, 794 on the betting board. SIU Edwardsville plays us at Little Rock, and Little Rock is a 3.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 146.5. With Little Rock, I did set them as an underdog of 4 points, so I'm going to be one to lay the number with SIU Edwardsville. You've got the Wright brothers and Jamar and Lamar Wright, who have been able to do a nice job combining for about 23 points per contest, but what has really been incredible for the team, DeMarco Minor, who gives you about 11 points per contest, he stands just 6 feet tall, and yet he's able to give the team nearly 9 rebounds per game. They go up against an Arkansas Little Rock team as well outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and when it comes to this Little Rock bunch, they have been a team that's just been getting completely tattooed on defense. 264th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They are giving up about 10.6 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot-scoring environment rather than at home. And for this SIU Edwardsville team, it was a team that last year was honestly one of your better mid-major defenses in all of college basketball that really slid away towards the beginning part of the season, but all of a sudden they've been able to pick it up. They're back inside of the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's really been what they've been able to do at home. They're giving up 13.7 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-recorded environment. It's an Edwardsville team that allows opponents to shoot just 27% from three-point range at home, more around 36% away from home, and they're going to be looking to shut down a pair of guys in Jameer Chaplin along with Kalen Robinson, who have been able to combine for in that neighborhood about 32 points per contest, with Chaplin was a career about 25% three-point shooter coming into the season. He's now been able to shoot just a hellacious north of 35% from three-point range, but I do think that this is going to be a bunch in SIU Edwardsville that's going to be able to do a relatively solid job of holding up on the glass, even though they don't necessarily have a ton of tremendous size. This is a Little Rock team that they could be at a little bit more down low. They've been able to get right around about 6.5 rebounds per game out of Jameer Chaplin, but this is a Little Rock team that they do a very poor job of being able to generate those second and third chances with regards to the rebound rate of Little Rock. Currently, they're clocking in about 185th with this regard, and while Edwardsville is more around 215th overall for the season, it very much has been able to ascend and improve as things have been going along. As last time these two teams played, Little Rock won 88-80 on January 4th. That was a day where things just went completely harebrained in that game. Little Rock went 7-14 from three-point range. They shot 57.5% overall from the floor. Ever since that game, in the last 5, as SIU Edwardsville has played 5 games ever since that, they have given up 64 points or fewer in every one of those games. Meanwhile, for Little Rock, they, ever since that time span, have been able to improve a little bit with their defense. They've given up 75 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 5 games. That said, this has been a team that's been pretty consistent with regards to their offense, getting to at least 72 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So it is a scenario of something's got to give. I did set my total at 148. I do think that this is an Edwardsville team that is much improved with regards to their defense, but still a pretty rock solid offense. They've been able to get past 74 points in 2 of their last 3 games, and this is a Little Rock team that is playing at a top 50 rate with regards to tempo in all of college basketball. So going to be willing to entertain the over here, and did set my line at a 4, so at a 3.5. Going to be willing to lay with Edwardsville to go along the over. 795, 796 on the betting board. Eastern Illinois plays those to UT Martin, and UT Martin is a favorite of a point. Total on this game is 149.5. Say UT Martin as a favorite of 3.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. UT Martin is a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, and I do think that they are going to essentially run Eastern Illinois off the floor. Eastern Illinois' lifeblood is generating turnovers. They're a top 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, with Tiger Booker really being the head of the snake. 15 points, 3 assists, 2.3 steals per contest. Only shoots about 30% from 3 after last season. He was shooting more around 40% from 3-point range, but this UT Martin team, 12.2 turnovers per game for the tempo that they play is actually relatively solid. UT Martin is also going to be able to dominate on the boards. Jacob Cruz, Issa Muhammad, they've been able to combine for about 16.5 rebounds per game. On the flip side, you have been able to get Cooper Jacoby to be able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game for Eastern Illinois, but you really don't have anyone outside of him to be able to do a solid job on the glass. It's a UT Martin team that's about 153rd in all of college basketball yards or rebound rate for Eastern Illinois. They're clocking in more around 233rd in all of college basketball. And when it comes to this UT Martin team, they're actually giving up fewer points per possession on the road rather than at home. They're giving up, as a matter of fact, 3.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than when they are away from home. And this is an Eastern Illinois team that, despite the fact that they do a good job of being able to generate some turnovers, this team, they are 309th with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They're not able to utilize those turnovers and lead to second chance opportunities or anything like that, and that's an issue when you're still outside the top 215 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and have to go up against someone in Jordan Sears, who's shooting 44.5% from 3, 19.5 points per contest. Jacob Cruz as well, while he does give you about 8 boards per contest, he also chips in there 18 points, shoots 43.5% from the outside. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team. You were hoping that Kenny White would be able to give you a little bit more. He's been out there for only about 6 games thus far this season, but KK Curry is able to still give you about 9 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And when it comes to this UT Martin team, they do have a little bit of vulnerability when it comes to giving up the arc. They're about 150th in all of college basketball in regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but that's more at home. They allow opponents to shoot 36.5% from 3-point range at home, more around 31.6% in a roadside shoot court environment. Meanwhile, Eastern Illinois allows opponents to shoot 37.2% from distance when they are at home. This is a UT Martin team that has actually been able to do a solid job defensively recently. They have now given up 73 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games after when these two teams faced off the first time around. Eastern Illinois got that 79-72 win, a game in which they went 11 of 26 from 3-point range and won the turnover battle 16-14. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of reversal here. I do think that for an Eastern Illinois team that has really had a scuffle being able to put points upon the board, 68 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, they're going to be held down a little bit here. So I did set Martin as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And with regards to the total, I did set mine at a 149.5. We're seeing a stray 150 come onto the board at a 150 or higher. Looking at the under, if we dip down below 149, going to be taking a look at this total over. 797, 798 on the betting board. Arizona is playing goes to Cal. California is a 17 to a 17.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 158. I did set Arizona as an 18.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's been an all or nothing Arizona team. You either get this team going into flamethrower mode and winning by 20 points, or they lose outright. Last time these two teams played, Arizona got to that 100-point plateau. They won that game by 19, and they were able to dominate on the boards, with Umar Bello being able to give you about 12.5 points, 9 boards for the entirety of the season. Now, where Arizona is really going wrong is with regards to their defense. This is an Arizona team that they've got no questions or qualms with regards to the offense. 7th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but this is an Arizona team that has slipped outside the top 35 with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis, especially when they're away from home. At home, they're actually still one of the top defenses in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, they're a top 7 defense with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. At home, they're actually giving up about 23.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home, having Pelle Larsson, Caleb Love just be on the same page a little bit more defensively. The offense has been able to travel. These two guys combined for about 6.5 assists, and Larsson is shooting 45.5% from three-point range, but defense, when they leave home, it's been a little bit more lax. They go up against a Cal team that, want to talk about defenses that have been bad both at home and away from home, that would be Cal. They are outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They are a team that actually gets some relatively good rebounding out of Jalen Tyson along with Fardaws Aimek. A combined 18 rebounds, 36 points per contest, both shooting north of 35.5% from three-point range. And again, they got to 80 points the last time they played against Arizona, but that was at home. The backcourt has been a little bit suspect for the team. Jalen Celestine is only giving you about 7.5 points per game and has been in and out of the fold. Keontae Kennedy, it's a little bit of mixer and shaker, giving you about 10 points, 5 boards, 2 assists. I mean, he does a little bit of everything well. He doesn't do one thing great, but I do think that for Arizona, they are going to be able to figure it out a little bit more with regards to their defense. It has been a little bit of a rough stretch for them, but offense has never really been in question for this Arizona team. They have been held below 75 points just 2 times all season long. This is a Cal team that, when they've been on the road, they still have been able to do a relatively solid job with regards to their offense, but once again, they're another team that they do suffer from those home and road splits. When it comes to this Cal team, they are currently about 160th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and I do think that Arizona is going to be able to take advantage of the fact that Cal is outside the top 275 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage and go bombs away. I set my total 158.5, so you're at the 158 looking over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 18 with Arizona. 799, 800 on the betting board. Tennessee Tech plays us to Southern Indiana. Southern Indiana does find themselves as an underdog of 2.5 points. Totals between 137.5 and 138 with Southern Indiana. I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points, so you're at the 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Tennessee Tech. This squad has been able to do a relatively okay job of being able to take care of the ball. That said, this team is outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but good news is they get to go up against a Southern Indiana team that's been all sorts of awful for them. Southern Indiana has been one of the biggest droppers with regards to three-point shooting percentage from a season ago. Last year, a top 40 team with regards to three-point shooting percentage. This year, shooting just 31.2% from the outside. Now, the players that give you north of 3.7 points per contest, they've got one guy that's shooting above 32% from three-point. Jack Melky has been able to give you about 8.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Now, A.J. Smith has been able to do a solid job supplying the team with about 9 or so rebounds per game, but they're going up against a squad in Tennessee Tech that, well, they don't necessarily do a lot great. The one place where you can really carve them up more than any other place is from beyond the arc. They at home are allowing opponents to shoot right around about 35.5% from three-point range, and Southern Indiana, unfortunately, doesn't have the pieces to do so this season. Meanwhile, for Southern Indiana, they are much better at home rather than on the road. Then on the road, they are allowing opponents to shoot 35.7% from the outside. At home, this goes more around 30.2% from three-point range. And overall, for the overall defense of Southern Indiana, they're about 212th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With Tennessee Tech, they're clocking in more around 309. So you've got your big-time issues with both of these teams. But I do think that for Tennessee Tech, they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job in this affair, with Javius Harvey being able to supply the team with about 15.5 points per contest. As a whole, Tennessee Tech, they're shooting about 32% from three-point range. You've had David Early along with Rodney Johnson be able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest, and now you've been able to get a bit more down low of Daniel Igbenui, who's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, chips in there, a block, 2 assists per contest. Good versatility out of him. It's been a pair of teams that they've been rough all season long. They're rough offensively, they're rough defensively. For Southern Indiana, this team has been able to exceed the 70-point plateau just once in the month of January, and last time these two teams played, Tennessee Tech went on the road, won 73-59 in a game where Southern Indiana went just 5 of 20 from three-point range, lost a turnover battle, and though Southern Indiana actually won the rebound battle that time around, I did think that Tennessee Tech could be able to play even up on the glass. I do think that Southern Indiana just continues to struggle from 3, and for Tennessee Tech, they themselves 70 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. So good old something's got to give sort of game. I set my total at 137.5. Here at the 138, I'm going to be looking at the under. And with Tennessee Tech, I did make them the favorite of 3.5 points. I'm willing to lay up to 3 with them. 801, 802 on the betting board. Lindenwood plays us Western Illinois. Western Illinois, it's a 4 to 4.5 point favorite. Your total is 129 with Western Illinois. I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Western Illinois has actually been really slowing things down. They're outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, and Western Illinois certainly leaves something to be desired on offense. Western Illinois, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, just 305th in all of college basketball, but where the team is really taking hold is with regards to their defense, especially with Adam Cisse being a top 5 player in all of college basketball with regards to rebounds per game with about 11.5 per contest. With Western Illinois, they're about 131st in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Lindenwood team team that they just can't find their footing. Lindenwood is outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Keaton Cole is really your main contributor for them. 6.5 boards, 19 points per contest, but it's a team that they shoot 27.5% from three. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 2.3 assists per contest. Outside of Cole and Darius Bean, who gives you 12.5 points per contest, nobody else on the roster gives you north of 7 points per game. You just are having a rhymeless, reasonless Lindenwood team that they don't even generate a lot of turnovers either. And for this Western Illinois team, say what you will about the offense, because it has not been great to say the least. This team defensively has been one of the better ones in the mid-major ranks. They have surrendered 70 points or fewer in every one of their games since the beginning of the month of December. The last team to be able to break 70 against them, Wisconsin, who scored 71 points against them. So this has been a Western Illinois team that has been great on that front. You do have a pair of guys in Ryan Myers along with James Dent Jr., who both are giving you about 13.5 points per contest. Myers is shooting 45.5% from three, began his career at Iona. He's been solid with that regard. Now, for Western Illinois, the 13.5 turnovers per game, they do need to cut down on that. But again, Lindenwood, I don't think is going to be able to do a solid job of being able to generate those turnovers. And you take a look at this Lindenwood offense, it's just been completely stuck in the mud. They were able to break the 70-point plateau once in the month of January. That was against an absolutely horrible Southeast Missouri State team, this Lindenwood team. I don't think that they have broken the 74-point plateau really all season long. They might have done so once against a non-D1 team, but I do think that Western Illinois is going to be able to control the turns of this game, one that I think is going to be slow and grimy. I'm going to be able to lay it with Western Illinois, set them as a favorite of more around 6.5 points, and did set my total at a 130.5. I do think that for Lindenwood, them being outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis is going to do just enough to allow Western Illinois to get online with their offense. And for this Lindenwood team, while they have not been able to really exceed 75 all season long, they've gotten to at least 66 points in 3 out of their last 4 games. So I think that this has went just a touch too low. Set my total at a 130.5, so we'll take the 129 over and want to lay it with Western Illinois. 803, 804 on the betting board. Wright State hopes to be the right side. They play host to Youngstown St. Youngstown State, an underdog of 2.5 points. Draw this game between 164 and 165.5. With Youngstown State, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. So here at the 2.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Wright State. Wright State, almighty awful with regards to their defense. They are well outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But this is a Wright State team that is able to put up points in a hurry, and they're going up against a Youngstown State team that has seen a little bit of a flip in their identity. With Youngstown State, they're actually number 71 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while this is a team that's more around 88th in the country in terms of points for on a per possession basis. This Youngstown State team a season ago was a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So that's been a little bit of a flip for Wright State. They're going to need to rely upon just being able to win the battle down low to be able to separate in this game, as Wright State has been a relatively solid rebound rate team. You've got a pair of guys in A.J. Brown along with Brandon Noel who will be able to give you about 13 to 13.5 rebounds per game. Wright State, in terms of their overall rebound rate, about 142nd in the country. To the credit of Youngstown State, they're actually 74th in the country with this regard. And in a road/record environment, Youngstown State, a top 35 team with regards to rebound rate. They only have one guy on the roster, though, that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. That'd be DJ Turn It Up Burns, 11.5 points, 9.5 boards, shoots 38% from 3-point range for a Youngstown State team that they do only shoot about 33.5% from the outside. Brandon Rush, Ziggy Reed, these two guys have been able to combine for about 27 points per contest, and that's where you really want to attack this Wright State team. They're 337th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while opponents shoot north of 41% from 3 when they're at home. Meanwhile, Youngstown State, they allow opponents to shoot 40% from 3-point range at home, 29.5% in a road/record environment. I see inevitable regression happening with regards to those splits. It is a Youngstown State team that's been slowing it down a little bit, and for this Wright State team, while they're getting to 80 plus on the regular and they're giving up 80 plus on the regular, this is a team that's more around 60th with regards to total possessions per game. It's fast. It's not warp speed fast, and for this Wright State team, I do think that their dynamic duo and Trey Calvin along Tanner Holden going to be able to do just enough to be able to win and cover this game. These two guys combined for about 36.5 points per contest. Calvin shooting 45% from 3-point range. These two guys combined for 3 steals, 7.5 assists per contest. You've also got AJ Hullaburste, who's been able to shoot about 36.5% from 3, 11.5 points per contest for Wright State. They shoot overall 39% from 3, and also shoot 77% at the free throw line. This is a Youngstown State team that, in a late game scenario, they shoot about 76.5% at the free throw line. And for this Youngstown State team, each of their top 5 scores, they do shoot at least 78% of the charity stripe. So both of of these teams relatively trustworthy in a late game spot. I do think that this is going to be a game where we are going to see the Youngstown State defense has now given up 71 points or fewer in each out of the last 5 games. Take a little bit of a hold, but Wright State, they themselves have been just a complete flamethrower on offense, scoring at least 80 points each out of their last 4 games. So it's a scenario something's got to give. Last time these two teams played, Youngstown State got the 81-71 win in that game. Youngstown State, they were able to do a solid job of being able to shoot from 2-point range, and they were able to win the rebound battle 42-38. I think that Wright State flips the script with regards to rebounds, and that's how they were able to pull this one off. I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 with Wright State, and did set my total at 165. Here at the 164, like I'm saying, I'm looking at the over, and I'm willing to lay with Wright State. 805-806 on the betting board. Liberty, it's road face-off against New Mexico State. New Mexico State is an underdog of between 4.5 to 5 points at home. Total on this game is 136 with New Mexico State. I did set them as an underdog of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Liberty team that has been relatively rough in terms of Conference USA play. This has been a squad that has been one of the bigger underachievers with regards to conference play at the mid-major ranks, but he should be able to dominate down low Joe Van Zandt, along Zach Cleveland, combining for about 13.5 rebounds per game, and it's still a Liberty team that is shooting 36.5% from 3-point range, going against a New Mexico State team that is outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're allowing opponents to shoot 35% from 3-point range. Now, for New Mexico State, they allow opponents to shoot just 29% from 3-point range at home, more around 38% in a roadside-shoot corner environment, and they do go up against a Liberty team that is about 116th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I love what I've seen there, and for New Mexico State, just been a case where the lack of chemistry has really shown up. They're just 322nd in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. This New Mexico State team as well on defense, they're one of the most frequent fouling teams in all of college basketball. We've seen them in games that have to go to pretty much like 5 guys with regards to their rotation. I think that they were down to 4 guys in that game against Louisville earlier in the season, very hilariously, and this team does turn the ball over 13 times per contest. Femi Odekale has all sorts of talent. He's able to give you about 11.5 points, 6 boards per contest, but there's just not a lot of outside shooting outside of Dalen Jackson-Posey for the team, who's been able to shoot 45% from 3, and he's been out since January 11th, so that really takes away your best outside threat. Among your top 6 scorers that are going to be available in this game, none of them shoot above 34.8% from 3-point range, with Robert Carpenter being that main guy. Kalu Azugi has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, so New Mexico State has been able to improve a little bit on the glass, but this is still a team that is getting gashed quite a bit inside, but goes up against a Liberty team that they are going to be looking to bomb it quite a bit from 3-point range, but what this Liberty team does a relatively solid job of is cutting you off from second chance opportunities. They are going to oftentimes give you a little bit of an open look the first time around, but they do a good job of being able to hit the glass. They themselves don't necessarily give you a whole heck of a lot of second chances, but this is a New Mexico team that, with regards to the opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, they have been allowing them to shoot at a clip of about 48%. That's about 116th in all of college basketball. They've been able to prove a little bit with that regard, so I do think the Liberty is going to be taking it a little bit more to the outside. I do think that someone like Jordan Rawls, who's been able to give this New Mexico State team 4 assists per contest, is going to be able to help out a little bit, but I do think that this Liberty team, despite the fact that they've been a little bit rough recently, but they still have been pretty solid with regards to their defense. They've given up fewer than 70 points in regulation in 4 of their last 5 games. They're going to be able to take it out of a New Mexico State team that they themselves just had a tough time scoring all throughout conference play. This team has not exceeded the 73-point plateau really ever since the month of November, so I do think that you're in for a little bit of a lower scoring slog. I did set my total at a 134.5, looking at the under. I do think that Liberty wins from within. I do think that Liberty is going to be able to make some threes on a New Mexico State team that I think is going to see some regression with regards to their home and road 3-point shooting defense splits. So did set my total 134.5, looking at the under, and want to lay up to 6 with Liberty. 807-808 on the betting board. Same used to say it's a road face-off against Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky does find themselves as 3.5-point favorites. Total on this game, 154.5 with Western Kentucky. I did set them as 4-point favorites, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Sam Houston State team that has been really trying to regroup after they lost their coach in Jason Newton, who ironically enough went over to New Mexico State during the offseason. And with Western Kentucky, while this team does have their warts with regards to their offense, they're well outside the top 200 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, turning the ball over 14.5 times per contest. This team does shoot about 34% from 3-point range. Don McHenry, Christian Lander, they've both been able to shoot about 37% from 3-point range, and Tyrone Marshall has really been able to give this team a nice jolt recently as well. 8+ points in 4 of the last 5 games, 3+ assists in 4 of the team's last 5 games, while being able to shoot 38% from 3-point range as a 6'7", just do-it-all sort of player. They go up against the Sam Houston State team that they're still one of those holes greater than some of its parts teams, with Davon arms, Lamar Wilkerson, being able to combine for about 29 points per contest, but it is a Sam Houston State team that they're turning the ball over about 13 times per contest, and you tell this is just not the same defense than it was a season ago. Last year, Sam Houston State was tremendous at taking the ball away. Now they're relatively average at being able to generate those turnovers. Sam Houston State about 130th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Western Kentucky team that, to their credit, they're about 57th in the country with this regard, and it's a Western Kentucky team that has really built their defense around being able to guard the arc. Western Kentucky is 58th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. It's a Sam Houston State team that does have Jaden Raid, giving you about 4 assists per contest, doesn't necessarily give you a ton of scoring, but he's been able to shoot about 35% from three-point range. And for Western Kentucky, while they are a team that they certainly do a good job of being able to guard the arc, they're also a top 100 team in the country with regards to rebound rate. Brandon Newman coming in from Purdue is able to give you about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game, and they go up against the Sam Houston State squad that is more around 140th with this regard. Both of these teams are having a few similarities in the way that they function on offense. On defense, certainly it's a little bit different, and the tempo for Western Kentucky is a bit faster, but that said, these two teams, they have some similarities, but it feels like Western Kentucky is just a slight nudge better than Sam Houston State in so many respects. Last time these two teams played, Sam Houston State was able to get a 78-74 win on their home court. In this game, both of these teams combined to shoot 18 of 43 from three-point range. Both teams have 15 turnovers in this one. Sam Houston State won the rebound battle the first time around. I did think that Western Kentucky going to do a little bit of a better job on the glass and be able to get their revenge. I set my total at a 154, so here at 154.5, it's my minimum buy point on the under, but it is my buy point on the under of the Western Kentucky. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3.5 points with them. 809, 810 on the betting board. It is Montana State playing against Eastern Washington, and Eastern Washington is a favorite of 3.5 points. So on this game between 153.5 and 154 for Eastern Washington. I made them a 5.5 point favorite. So here at the 3.5, I'm going to be willing to lay this summer. It is an Eastern Washington team that has been able to do a tremendous job with their offense, but it sees a big giant fall off when they are away from home. Eastern Washington, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, has been one of your better mid-major teams in all of college basketball, clocking in 89th in the country with this regard, but they do score 19.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. But I'm still willing to take them in the spot just because this is a Montana State team that they've been a little bit rudderless themselves. They're about 190th in the country with regards to their offensive efficiency. Love Robert Ford, 15 points, 7 boards, multiple steals per contest at 6 feet tall. He's just a mighty warrior out there on the floor, but this is also a Montana State team that they're 263rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With this Montana State team, you really don't have a lot of size down low, and I do think that all the weapons that you got for Eastern Washington are just going to be able to win out in this spot. You've got guys like Cedric Coward, along Dane Erickstrup. They've been able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest. Both of these guys stand north of 6'6" and combine to shoot 40% from three-point range. Jake Hyman is shooting about 41% from the outside. Eastern Washington does turn the ball over about 13 times per contest against a Montana State team that they do a relatively solid job of being able to wrestle the ball away, but this has been a Montana State team that they have been getting cooked defensively. They have given up at least 70 points in all but 2 of their games since the beginning of the month of January. You've been able to have Brandon Garaki be able to give you about 15 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and you do want to be attacking this Eastern Washington team down low. On Montana State, they really just don't have the size to be able to do so. For Montana State, they're just 334th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Eastern Washington more in that neighborhood, about 154th in the country. You've been able to have Brandon Walker be able to chip in there about 13.5 points per contest, and all in all, it is a Montana State team that they do shoot about 35.5% from three-point range. They're going up against an Eastern Washington team that they certainly give you the green light from three-point range or outside the top 250 with regards to three-point shooting percentage. But that said, when it comes to this Montana State team, they do allow you to be able to get a few open looks as well. They're about 151st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. It's a little bit better at home rather than in a roadside-shoot court environment, and you do have Trey Patterson on the side of Montana State, who has been able to give you about 7 to 8 points per contest. He's been able to shoot about 37% from distance, but though Eastern Washington has their demonstrative home and road splits, you just take a look at what this offense has been able to do recently. In the month of January, Eastern Washington got to at least 77 points in every single one of their games. This team is just on an almighty heater, 77 plus points for them in each of their last 9 games. Montana State, I just don't think that they're going to be able to match up, though this is a Montana State team that they themselves have gone to at least 77 in 4 of their last 5 games. So a very interesting scenario here. I did set my total of 153.5. This is a Eastern Washington team that they don't score quite as much when they're on the road, and I do think that they're going to come down a little bit, but I still think that Eastern Washington gets the job done against a Montana State team that just has absolutely nothing down low. You're at a 154 higher, looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 5 points with Eastern Washington. 8-11, 8-12 on the betting board. Montana Montana plays those to Idaho. Idaho does find themselves as an underdog of 14 points. So on this game is 141 to 141.5. I did sell Montana as a favorite of 15 points. So here at the 14, I'm going to be willing to lay it. When it comes to Montana, this squad has really been able to have Aiden Moody pick it up from three-point range. He was rough in the first 2 months of the season from distance. Now he's shooting 37% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with 15 points per game. And Montana has been able to pick it up with regards to their overall rebounding as well. And this is a team that they see a nice rise with regards to their offense as well. They're about 69th, very nice with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but scoring 12.5 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home. It's a Montana team that, with regards to rebound rate, they're now ascending into the top 150. And this Idaho team are once again outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis and just getting cooked on the glass. 330th with regards to the rebound rate. They have to match up with Lyle OK along with Deshaun Thomas. We're combining for about 12.5 rebounds per game. When it comes to this Idaho bunch, you've been able to get a little bit of something down low out of Julius Mims, who's been able to give you 11.5 points, 7 rebounds per game, and does shoot 41.5% from three. To the credit of Idaho, they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, but to the deficit of Idaho, this team is 333rd with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. They go up against a Montana team that certainly is going to give you some open looks as well, with Montana 227th in the country with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that goes to 27.8% at home, 38.5% away from home. This is a Montana team that's giving up well more than 12 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/scoring environment. Quinn Denker is right now your top scorer for Idaho, right around 12 points per contest. So this is an Idaho team that they themselves, with regards to their home and road splits, they just aren't the same team with regards to being able to put the ball in the bucket when they do leave home. They've got a nice home court advantage over there in Moscow. They're averaging about 6.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home, and they're only about 268th in the country with regards to overall offensive efficiency. And Idaho right now is really taking it on the chin. This is a Idaho team that they lost every single one of their games in the month of January, giving up at least 75 points in all but one of them. Meanwhile, for Montana, defense has really been able to rise up. They've now given up 72 points or fewer in 5 out of their last 6 games. So I do think that Montana is going to be able to hold up here against an Idaho team that just hasn't gotten a lot generated when they've been away from home. I did set my total at a 141. Both of these teams well outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game. So diving under, and with Montana, one to lay up to 14.5 with them. A 13-8-14 on the betting board. Jacksonville St is on the road facing off against UTEP. And UTEP does find themselves as a 4.5 point favorite, and your total on this game is varying between 129.5 and 130. And with UTEP, set them at a 3.5. So at 4 or more, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Jacksonville St. Jacksonville State has been able to do a really good job with regards to their defense. Now, the Jacksonville State offense is leaving a lot of something to be desired, 257th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. But if you take a look at the numbers, this is a Texas El Paso team that they're 321st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, to the credit of UTEP, they're averaging about 18.4 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/scoring environment. But for UTEP, they're well outside the top 250 with regards to the rebound rate. This is a Jacksonville team that is in the top 125 with that regard. It's a UTEP team that they're going to be looking to generate turnovers. They're a top 5 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and though most of the offense, it is rather rough, they have been able to get right around 18.5 points per contest. Jay Hardy, who's been able to shoot about 38% from three-point range. You've got down low Calvin Solomon along with Kevin Kalu, but able to combine for about 9 rebounds per game as well. But that said, you're going to need to just get a little bit more from the outside, as this UTEP team, they're only shooting about 31% from three-point range, and you've got a Jacksonville State team that has been able to lock it down from three-point range. This Jacksonville State team is in the top 75 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis from three-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 32.2% from distance, and this is a UTEP team that they are going to gamble for turnovers. When they don't get a turnover, they're going to leave you relatively open inside the arc. Now, with regards to their three-point shooting percentage outside the arc, it's honestly been relatively solid. They're allowing opponents at home to shoot about 32.2% from three-point range, but that's not really the game of Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State has had Kai Tandy, who's been able to do a solid job. He's been able to supply the team within that neighborhood of about 19 points per contest, so love what he's been able to bring to the table for this team, but it's been all about what they've been able to get out of guys like Jawan Purdue, Marcellus Brigham, who have been able to combine for about 10 rebounds per game. I do think that with Jacksonville State turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest, that's going to be a little bit of an issue, and that's why UTEP is going to be able to guard their home floor, but I just don't think that UTEP is going to be able to do enough to be able to cover this game just because the offense, it has been so rough for this team. They have scored now 68 points or fewer in conference in 4 out of their last 6 games within Conference USA. Meanwhile, this Jacksonville State team, they have taken it on the chin a little bit defensively. They have given up now at least 74 points in 3 out of their last 4 games, with the lone exception being that most recent game against Liberty, but offense has been able to get it going a little bit more as well. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a low-scoring slog with neither team being able to put the ball in the bucket, but I do think that we've run a little bit too low because I do think that we're going to get some late night game falling in, you've got a UTEP team that is a little bit more of a mid-tempo team. So did set my total 131.5. I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. And when it comes to UTEP, I set them as the 3.5 point favorites. So taking 4+ here with the Gamecocks. 8-15, 8-16 on the betting board. Grand Canyon is going to be playing us to Seattle. Seattle is a 9 to a 9.5 point underdog. Total between 138 and 138.5. Grand Canyon looking for revenge for the last time these two teams met, and I think they get their revenge, but not to the point of 9+ points. I set my line at 8.5, so going to be willing to take the points with Seattle. This Seattle team has been absolutely superb with their defense. 29th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're giving up 11.9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home, going up against Grand Canyon team that's 14th in the country, by the way, with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So they have been able to do an absolutely supreme job of being able to lock it down. That said, I do think that this is a good opportunity for Seattle to be able to hold in there, because with Seattle, it used to be a case where they were very top heavy. They would have Cam Tyson do a little bit of everything, and he's still their top scorer with 17.5 points per contest, but being able to bring in there someone like a John Christophilius, who comes in from Creighton. He and Alex Shoemaker have been able to combine for 27 points per contest. Brandon Chatfield, Kobe Williamson, down low combined for 2.5 blocks, 12 rebounds. Both give you about 10 points per contest. The disbursement of overall production is much better with the Seattle team than it has been in the past. Meanwhile, Grand Canyon has one of the best do-it-all players in the country, Ty and Grant Foster. Block and a half, steal and a half, 5.5 boards, 19.5 points per contest for a Grand Canyon team that they have taken a little bit of a fall off with regards to their three-point shooting. They're shooting about 33% from the outside, going up against a Seattle team that, with regards to the way that they guard the arc, it is one of the best in all of college basketball. 4th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Grand Canyon, they themselves do a nice job blocking it down from three-point range. Top 65 team in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But the way that Grand Canyon is going to be looking to generate some offenses actually via their defense. They become a team that's been very good at being able to generate turnovers. 39th in the country in terms of turnovers for us on a per possession basis, but actually generating a turnover on a per possession basis more on the road rather than at home, which I do find to be very interesting. And Seattle, they themselves, they're 78th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but in a road/neutral court environment that does ascend to the top 50. You should have Grand Canyon be able to win the battle down low, but both of these teams are top 100 teams with regards to their rebound rate. Gabe McLaughlin has been able to give you about 8 boards, 14.5 points per contest. I like Duke Brandon being able to give you 6.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, as Sidney Curry has just become a little bit of an afterthought for this Grand Canyon team. And now you've got Javon Blackshear coming in off the bench, only giving you about 4.5 points per game, but he's been a nice sharpshooter, shooting 44% from three-point range. But with the way that Seattle was able to really take it to Grand Canyon the first time around, scoring 86 points out there in the great state of Washington, despite the fact that it was a Grand Canyon bunch that had 44 free throw attempts in that game. Really, both of those teams. They got the whistle going their way. I do think that the refs are going to let them play a little bit more in this one, which is why I did lower my total to a 142.5. I still think that this goes over. I think that this is an overcorrection, but I certainly think that things are going to be more tame. But with Seattle, going to be willing to take 9+ with them. I do think that their defense keeps them in it. 8-17, 8-18 on the betting board. Arizona State plays us to Stanford. Stanford finds themselves as an underdog of a point. Total on this game is 151 to 152, and with Stanford, I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Arizona State. Arizona State well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but this team has been a top 75 team with regards to their defense, and for Stanford, this team is completely reliant on the three ball. They are shooting about 39.5% from the outside, and other than Maximine Reynaud, out of your top 5 scorers, every one of them do shoot at least 43.5% from three-point range. You've been able to have Cannon Carlisle come in and give you about 15.5 points, 3 assists per contest. He has been a really nice cog for the team, but when it comes to Stanford, they just don't shoot the same when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. When they're away from home, they're averaging 20.6 points fewer per 100 possessions rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And Stanford overall for the season is 9th with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, but shoot 43.9% from three-point range at home, just 33.5% in a road/neutral court environment. They go up against an Arizona State team that has been relatively grody for their three-point shooting percentage, but they shoot 27% away from home, and Arizona State, they shoot more like 34% from three-point range when they are at home. So both of these teams who have some demonstrative home and road splits, Arizona State outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate. Stanford should be able to take hold of that with Reynaud being able to give you about 10 or so rebounds per game, but they've been also dealing with an injury to Jared Bynum. Jared Bynum, he just returned in that game against Cal, played 16 minutes. He had just 1 assist to 1 turnover. You could tell that he wasn't necessarily himself, so I've got my question marks as to what sort of Jared Bynum you're going to get in this game. I think that you have him out there on the court, but I think that he's less than 100%. Meanwhile, for Arizona State, Jose Perez, Frankie Collins, combining for about 27 points per contest. Collins is your do-it-all guard with about 3.5 assists, 3.2 steals, which is a top 5 number in all of college basketball, where Perez has actually been able to shoot 52% from three-point range. Now, for Arizona State, They shoot 65.5% of the free throw line. That is going to be a little bit of an issue when it comes to a little bit more of a nip and tuck game, but I just don't have any faith whatsoever in a Jared Ass team being able to get the job done late. He has no idea how to just control his guys and to be able to draw up some good plays when it comes to a late game scenario. This is also the same for a team that's 246th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, while Arizona State has been relatively solid there. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 27% from three at home. I do think that Arizona State's defense is going to take hold against the Stanford offense that just has not been the same when they've been away from home. So I did set Arizona State as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I think Arizona State does a good job guarding the arc. Set my total 147. Also looking under 819, 820 on the betting board. Utah Tech plays us to UT Rio Grande Valley. UT Rio Grande Valley does find themselves as a underdog of 5 to 5.5 points. Total on this game is anywhere between 151.5 and 152.5. With Grand Valley, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. 5.5 is my minimum buy point here, but when it comes to UT Rio Grande Valley, this has been a team that's been, once again, a little bit all over the place. They're a team that is well outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've been dealing with a little bit of an injury recently to one of their most versatile players, and Hassan Abdul Hakim. He has been really their do-it-all guy, shooting 39.5% for three, 14 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest for a team that they only shoot 30% for three, and they turn the ball over 15 plus times per contest. Top of that, they are a team that's well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, but this is a Utah Tech team that they turn the ball over north of 15 times per contest. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, Utah Tech is well outside the top 225 with that regard, and they're just 278th in the country with regards to the rebound rate as well. You've got Noah Gonsalves along with Tanner Christensen, who will be able to combine for about 23.5 points per contest, and Gonsalves to be able to shoot 40% from three. Christensen, he's able to give you about 6.8 rebounds per game, but those turnovers just come back to be very costly. And for Utah Tech, they're supposed to be a really good three-point shooting team. They're shooting 34.5% from distance, and they're shooting 64.5% at the free throw line in a cover sort of scenario. That's something that could really nip them in the butt. Now, they do go up against a UT Rio Grande Valley team that they can be had on the inside, and when it comes to three-point shooting percentage on the road, they allow opponents to shoot 37.5%. At home, that actually falls to about 24.5%, so they've got some of the more demonstrative home and road splits there, but this is a Utah Tech team that they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot about 30% from three-point range at home, about 36% away from home as well. I do think that both of those numbers are going to be ironing out just a little bit here, and these are a pair of teams that they just really have been struggling in general. Both of these teams are going to be looking to push some tempo. This is a UT Rio Grande Valley team then. They've given up at least 77 points in 3 out of their last 5 games. It's a Utah Tech team that they have failed to get past 71 points in each of their last 4 games, but they've given up at least 75 points in every one of them. Something's got to give. It is a scenario where at north of 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Grand Valley. I do think that this is going to be becoming a little bit more of an up and down track meet game, so I did set my total 157. I think you could get some late game following as well, so one at the over, and going to be looking at north of 5 here with Grand Valley. 821, 822 on the betting board. UC Davis is road face off against UC Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is a 4-point favorite. Your total is 141.5 to 142.5 with UC Santa Barbara. I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's been a Santa Barbara team that has been quite disappointing thus far this season, but I do think that they are going to be able to find it here. It's a Santa Barbara team that is going to be able to match the overall firepower that you get out of Elijah Pepper, who typically is the best player in any game. 21 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 39% from 3 for Mr. Pepper, but you've got A.J. Mitchell on the flip side for UC Santa Barbara. He's supplying 4 assists, nearly 4 boards, 20 points on 40% three-point shooting. You've got a Davis team that has been much better with regards to their defense thus far this season. A top 110 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Going up against a Santa Barbara team that usually this is a top 75 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Right now they're clocking in more around 145th, but interestingly with the Santa Barbara team, they've been much better defensively when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. For Santa Barbara, they're allowing about 6.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home. So that's been one of the more interesting splits in all of college basketball. They're going up against the UC Davis team that they're only giving up 0.2 of a point more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. But you've also got a UC Davis team that they actually do a relatively okay job on the glass, but they don't have anyone other than Niko Rokac who's really able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. It's a UC Davis team that when it comes to their rebound rate, they're about 200th in all of college basketball. Santa Barbara, they're on 32nd as you've got Neontre Ore, who's been able to give you 15 points, 5.5 boards, but it's been really area Mario Bland, who's done a good job down low, being able to supply 7 rebounds per game. I still don't know what to make out of the game of Josh Pierre-Louis. He's just a little bit all over the place, but has been able to shoot 42.5% from 3-point range, supplying the team with 12 plus points in 4 of the last 5 games, and he's really been able to step it up recently for this team as well. I do think that with Santa Barbara going up against the UC Davis team that is quite top heavy, but is doing a relatively solid job on defense, that they're going to be able to take it to them. This has been a Santa Barbara bunch that has been playing much better defensively recently. They have now given up 73 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that defensive fight is going to be continuing in this spot, which is why I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And with regards to total, I did set my total at 143.5. I do think that this is going to be a game close enough for late game felling. Last time these two teams faced off, that was in late December. That was a 76-62 win for UC Davis on a day where you saw both of these teams combine to go 9 of 32 from 3-point range. I think that both of these teams going to be a little bit warmer with that regard, and I do think that Santa Barbara, who lost the rebound battle first time around, they're able to avenge that. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Santa Barbara, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over 823, 824 on the betting board. Pacific places of Portland, and Portland is a 2.5 point favorite. Your total is between 151 and 151.5. With Portland, I did set them as a favorite of 6 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's a Portland team that has been having their issues all season long, and they do give up north of 15 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. You saw a little bit of fight with Pacific a few nights ago when they actually had the lead on Gonzaga at the half, but it felt like that was their last gasp for the entirety of the season for Pacific. This team is just not really doing anything right. They're outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. They shoot as a collective 63% to free throw line, 31.2% from 3-point range, and they got taken to overtime on their home floor by Mississippi Valley State. That's not great, to say the least. Both of these teams are certainly going to be allowing for a lot of wide open 3-point looks. Portland 332nd in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Pacific 267th. Now, I will say for Pacific, they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.5% from 3-point range when they are at home, and Mo Odom has been able to do a nice job building out the ball, 4.7 assists to about 2 turnovers per game while supplying the team with 9 points per contest, but I do think that Tyler Robertson is going to be the best player in this game, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting 37.5% from 3 for Portland with about 16.5 points per game, and Yatu Yamanachi Williams coming in from the Southland in Lamar. He should be able to give the team a bit more down low. He and Tyler Harris have been able to combine for about 13.5 rebounds per game. Yamanachi Williams at right around about 6'8", 6'9", is shooting north of 41% from 3-point range for a Portland team that they are shooting in the neighborhood about 35% from 3-point range. It's a Portland team that they do need to cut down on the 13.5 turnovers per game, but you've got much more of a pulse and you've got much more firepower on offense with this team rather than Pacific. With Pacific, they're 343rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For Portland, 259th, but while the Portland defense just completely tumbles when they're away from home, they're only scoring about 0.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're on the road rather than when they are at home. So I do think that you're going to be able to get some points up on the board, set my total at 150. I just don't trust him Pacific quite enough to be able to get this total over. So here at the 151.5, looking at the under, but I do think that Portland going to be able to own the paint down low. I do think that they just have a little bit more firepower in general and the better player in Tyler Robertson to be able to get it done. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Portland, made them a 6-point favorite, and looking at this total under 825, 826 on the betting board. Cal Poly is going to be playing host to UC Irvine. UC Irvine, shots off for the Anteaters, are 13.5 point favorites. Your total is between 130.5 and 131.5 with Cal Poly. I did set them as an underdog of 14 points. Here at the 13.5, I'm going to be willing to lay the number as a Cal Poly team that, man, it's just been rough for them. They've been able to have Kobe Sanders be able to step up. He's been able to give the team right around about 19 points per contest, and Jared Hyder, he's been able to chip in their double figures as well, but this is still a Cal Poly team that is ball outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and when you're outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, you better defend and you better rebound. Cal Poly is 260th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, going up against the UC Irvine team that this team has been so dominant on the road with regards to their defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a roadside shoot-scoring environment, UC Irvine giving up 2 full points fewer per 100 possessions than any other team in all of college basketball. They suck the life out of you. They do a good job by committee on the glass, with Andre 3000 Henry, Bent Lutkin, along with Devin Tills being able to combine for about 15 rebounds per game. You've got Henry shooting 45% from 3 with his 10 points per contest. Justin Owen has been able to give you 14 points per game. Pierre Cockrell, 6 assists to 2.3 turnovers per game. He makes sure that everything is so efficient with his UC Irvine team, and UC Irvine they always do a nice job of being able to guard the outside arc, as you've got Joel Armitraden for Cal Poly really being the lone guy in the roster that's able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, so they're going to need to look to the outside, and they're just not going to be able to do so against a UC Irvine team that they're allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range in that neighborhood about 32.5% on a roadside shoot court environment. That's more around 30.5% from three, and this is a Cal Poly team that isn't horrible in terms of being able to guard the arc. They're about 160th in college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but I do think that UC Irvine just going to go in there and absolutely house a Cal Poly team that they just aren't going to be able to match up down low. UC Irvine going to be able to use their physicality to be able to get it done, and once again, Irvine has been just so dominant defensively that I think Cal Poly is going to be fighting an uphill battle to be able to get to 55. I set my number at a 130 with regards to the total, at a 131.5, looking under, and willing to lay up to 13.5 with Irvine. 827, 828 on the betting board. CSUN, Cal State Northridge is on the road facing off against UC San Diego. San Diego is a favorite of 9.5 points. Total on this game is 151.5. With UC San Diego, I did set them as a favorite of 8 points. So I'm going to be taking a look at the 9.5 with CSUN. This is a CSUN team that's still been able to do a relatively solid job defensively. We have seen things hit the skids a little bit for them, but they're still a top 150 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're still a top 100 team when it comes to their rebound rate, and in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 75th in all of college basketball, going up against a UC San Diego team that does have Bryce Pope, who's able to give you 18 plus points per contest, and this has been a San Diego team that's been able to do a solid job of rebounding by committee. They're about 112th in all of college basketball with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis, but I mean, really, other than Emmanuel Shaminga, who's a 7-footer who comes in from UC Irvine, you don't necessarily have a bunch of rough and tumble guys when it comes to this team. For this UC San Diego team, they're about 190th in the country with regards to rebound rate, and they actually rebound better when they're in a roadside shoot corner environment rather than at home. And you've got Deontay Bostic, Elon Deschamps, Ellen Ikens for CSUN, who have been able to combine for about 32 points per contest. Both of these guys shooting in the mid-30s for three-point range, though it is a CSUN team that the big thing that they need to clean up upon is the turnovers. North of 14 turnovers per game. That's been a little bit of an issue. They go up against a San Diego team that is relatively average at being able to generate turnovers. And to the credit of this UC San Diego team, they've really been able to do a good job defensively recently. They have now given up 66 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is a CSUN team that has just fallen on some tough times in general with regards to their offense. 72 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, despite being a top 80 team with regards to total possessions per game. But I do think that G&I Hunt, him coming into the fold, giving you 4 assists, 10.5 points per contest after he was out of the fold to begin the season. It's taken him a little bit of time to be able to pick up the offense. I think that he's starting to find his footing a little bit more. And then you've got a 36% three-point shooter in Keontae Jones, who comes up from the D2 level. He's able to give you 7 boards, 12 points per contest. I do think that with CSUN, they're going to be able to hold in this game with regards to rebounding. I think that that's going to be very key for them against a San Diego team that they've been able to get quite a bit more out of Tyler McGee, especially on the defensive side of things. If you take a look at their points allowed on a per possession basis with McGee out there on the floor, they're giving up well north of 5 points fewer per 100 possessions with them. So I do think that that's going to be very key. I think that CSUN still going to have a little bit of a tough time getting going offensively, but I do think that them being able to hold in there on the glass is going to be able to keep this game just close enough for late game fouling for you to be able to get that over. So I might total at 152, so you're at 151, 151.5. It's max I'm willing to take over, but I'm going to be willing to take a look at the over. And with CSUN, we'll take anything north of 8 with them. 829, 830 on the betting board. CS Bakersfield, meet me for the Roadrunners. They play us to Long Beach State. Long Beach State does find themselves as a 3.5 point favorite. Your total on this game is 145, and when it comes to Long Beach State, I did set them as a favorite of 3 points. So you're at the 3.5. I'm going to be taking a look at those Roadrunners. When it comes to Cal State Bakersfield, this team is still ranking well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Biggest reason why, they just don't have a lot on the glass. You have been having Modestus Concleles be able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. He's really the lone guy on the roster that's able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. And when it comes to Long Beach State, you've got the Traores, as Lucina Traore has been able to be a double-double machine for the team. He's been able to put up 9.5 rebounds, 11.5 points per game, and then Abakar Traore, 4 assists, 8 boards, 12 points, doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3, but gives you 1.7 blocks per contest, while Marcus Siones is a little bit of a bomber for the team, 17.5 points. Now, he shoots about 26.5% from 3-point range, so he's not an accurate bomber, as Long Beach State, once again, one of the more brutal teams with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage in all of college basketball, but this is a team that they just don't take a lot of threes. As a result, they're looking to knife the ball inside, and as a result, even though they don't shoot it well from 3-point range, this is a Long Beach State team that, in a roadside shoot corner environment, they actually average 3.4 points more per 100 possessions than they do at home. And with regards to their road offensive efficiency, this team does rank in the top 125 nationally. They're going up against a bunch in Cal State Bakersfield that other than Caleb Higgins, who's been able to give you about 16.5 points per contest, they just don't have a ton there. It's a Bakersfield team that they shoot in the low 30s from three-point range themselves, and I do think that they're going to have a tough uphill battle going up against this Long Beach State team. Now, for Bakersfield, they actually do a relatively solid job of being able to cut off 2-point shots. I do think that that could lead to a little bit of a lower scoring game, but for Bakersfield, they're also allowing opponents to shoot 39.5% from three-point range at home. This is a Long Beach State team that they themselves are about 189th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So I do think that both of these teams are going to be a little bit warmer from three-point range than they normally are, and this is a Long Beach State team that they just have an uncanny ability of being able to speed teams up. Even though Bakersfield is slow, they're inefficient on defense. That should allow Long Beach State to be able to get it done, though I do think we've went just a little bit too far here with the way that Long Beach State just overall shoots, not just from three-point range, but also shoots 68.5% at the free throw line in a nip-and-tuck game. I do think that's going to be a little bit difficult for them, so did set my total 147, looking at the over of Long Beach State, set them as a 3-point favorite, so 3.5 plus, taking a look at the points with Meep, the Roadrunners, 831, 832 on the betting board. Cal State Fullerton plays with Hawaii. Hawaii does find themselves as a 1.5 point underdog. Total loss game is 130, and with Hawaii, I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them right on the money line. This is a Hawaii team that has been disappointing on offense, but still a top 125 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's an Hawaii team that should be able to win the battle down low. Justin McCoy, along with Bernardo da Silva, being able to combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game. When it comes to rebound rate, this Fullerton team just doesn't have anyone down low that's able to give you rebounds. You don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of about 5.5 or so rebounds per game. Fullerton, 279th in the country with regards to their overall rebound rate. You've got DJ Bruton along with Max Jones, who are looking to do a little bit of everything, and combined about 30.5 points, 4.5 assists, north of 3 steals per contest between the two of them. And Jones shoots 40% from 3 for a team that they turn the ball over 13 times per contest. That's a low-tempo team. They shoot 32% from 3. Torrey San Antonio has been able to give you about 8 points per contest, but there's just nothing to speak of down low for this team. So a 7-footer like Mo Sek should be able to have his way with that regard. It is a Cal State Fullerton team that, as well as not doing a great job of being able to pound the ball inside, this is a team that they just can't find it from three-point range. Now, they don't allow you to shoot it very well from three-point range. They are 73rd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and Hawaii has seen a big giant drop-off with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, both on offense and on defense. On defense, they're about 219th with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but you still do have Javon McClanahan, who's been able to give you about 3.5 assists per contest. You've got Noel Coleman, who's been able to give you about 13.5 points per game, and typically when you think Hawaii, you think of a team that they play so much better on the island rather than when they're away from home. This has been an offense that, honestly, has been better on the mainland than on the road. They're scoring 2 points more per 100 possessions away from the island than they are in Hawaii. So I do think that Hawaii is going to be able to go on the road, get this thing done, and what I think is going to be a little bit of a low-scoring slog, though I do think that there might be a little bit of late-game fouling, and with Hawaii being able to pound the rock down low for some second and third chances on the boards, I do think that this total does go over. So my total 132.5. So looking at the over, especially with Hawaii giving up some more threes, and with Hawaii set them as a 2.5 point favorite. So looking at them right on the money line. Now we have my DK Network right to pick. This is 833, 834 on the betting board. USC is going to be playing us Oregon, and Oregon does find themselves as a 2-point favorite. Your total on this game is 149.5. I said Oregon as a 7-point favorite. My right up here is laying it with Oregon. Now the good news for USC is Boogie Ellis is back in the fold. The bad news for USC is that this has been one of the biggest and fattest disappointments in all of college basketball. This team is now 8-12 straight up, and after it looked like they were going to be able to do something, they started out the year 4-1. They have now went ever since then 4-11 straight up. This team is outside the top 150 with regards to their rebound rate, and now they have to go up against an Oregon team that gets back into the fold in Folly Dante, who's been able to give you about 15 points, 8 boards per contest, and in all 6 of the games that he's played in thus far this season for Oregon, they've gotten to 70 in every one of them. And for this USC team, we all talk about Boogie Ellis, and with him being in and out of the fold, how about if we talk about Isaiah Collier, who's been out of the fold recently for this USC team as well. And with Isaiah Collier out of the fold, this team has not been able to break the 70-point plateau at all. They had done so in all but one of their first 15 games of the season. That has really been taking hold, and if you do get Collier back in this game, he's probably not going to be anywhere close to 100%, and he's probably trying to protect himself because he's probably going to be a lottery pick, so let's just call it what it is there. This USC team does not have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, and they're outside the top 280 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, going up against an Oregon team that has been able to do a really good job of finding Jackson's shell set to be able to take control of the offense. He's been helping this team out by shooting 39.5% from 3 for a team that as a whole. They shoot 37 37.5% from three. You've been able to have Charleston give you about 12.5 points per contest. That has allowed Jermaine Cuisinart to play a little bit more off the ball. He's been able to do a nice job being the top scorer with about 15 points, 3 assists per contest. It's a bunch that you were just expecting a little bit more out of, like DJ Rodman, who's only been able to give you about 7.5 points per contest. All the transfers that USC has brought in, they just have not been able to do a solid job, just not been able to get the ball down low either. They're 293rd in all of college basketball with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage at home. That's just absolutely atrocious. You've got an Oregon team that is 27th in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. Gary Oquendo shooting 40+% from 3-point range, and a USC team that has been ghastly with their defense. Their offense is just not giving you anything with Isaiah Collier dealing with injury, and this is an Oregon team that, in their own right, they've gotten to at least 77+ points in 4 of their last 5 games. I think they go on the road, and I think they dominate. My DK Network right to pick that is laying the points with Oregon, set them as a 7-point favorite, made my total a 151 as well. I do think the USC gets back to 70, but I think that they just continue to bleed points. So looking at the over, and my write-up is going to be laying it with Oregon, 835, 836 on the betting board. UCLA plays this Oregon State. Oregon State finds themselves as an underdog of 9 points. Your total is 127 to 127.5. Semi-line at 10.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Oregon State coming off of some massive prosperity at home, but this has been a team that's been completely different when they've been away from Corvallis. This Oregon State team, they've been okay with regards to their defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this Oregon State team clocking in more in the neighborhood of about 199th in the country, but they are giving up 22.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And if you want to look at the Oregon State offense, they are scoring about 15 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot corner environment. You've got Jordan Pope, who's been able to give you 18 points on 39% 3-point shooting, but the team is going to have a tough time down low. Michael Rataj, Tyler Bladew have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game, so they've been able to do a nice job there. And Dexter Akano is able to give you about 10.5 points per contest, but Akano has been dealing with a little bit of injury as well, so that's something that you do want to be taking note of for Oregon State. This is a team that's about 200th in the country with regards to rebound rate, and for UCLA, the offense has been terrible. They're well outside the top 200 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but when they went to Corvallis the first time around, I think that was in late December, they were able to get a 69-62 win on the road. As UCLA in that game, they did go 9 of 19 from 3-point range. I don't think that lightning strikes twice. This has been a team that is only shooting about 30% from 3-point range, but you do have Laser Stefanovic, who's been able to give you 10 points per contest. Sebastian Mack has been your main guy to be able to flow the offense, 13.5 points. Only does out about 2 assists per contest, but able to give you a few boards, and then Adam Bona has been able to do a nice job bonifying this offense, being able to give you about 6 boards, a little bit over 2 blocks per contest for a UCLA team that still ranks in the top 75 nationally with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a UCLA team that has been able to do a better job of executing when they have been at home as well, and this is an Oregon State team that just flat out is not the same defense when they leave home, as this is an Oregon State team that's still about 73rd in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but UCLA, they're not looking to shoot threes right now because they can't do so. I think that they knife the ball inside. I do think that UCLA is going to be able to get right around 70 like they did the last time, and that'll be just enough for them to be able to get it done and cover this game. I said my total 130.5, so looking over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 10 with UCLA. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 837, 838. San Diego, it's a road face-off against San Francisco. San Francisco, an 18 to an 18.5 point favorite. Totals between 150.5 and 151. I did set San Diego as an underdog of 19 points, so here at 18 to 18.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it with the Dons. San Francisco, a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. San Diego, after a good start on defense to begin the season, they're not well outside the top 150, and this is a San Diego team that has certainly been allowing teams to be able to knife inside against them. Their 3-point shooting defense, honestly, is not terrible. They're about 150th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but other than Steven Jamerson, who's able to give you about 7 rebounds per game, you just don't have a lot on the inside. This is a San Francisco team that is a top 20 team with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that Jonathan Mogbo is the only guy that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game, but it's just really a collective when it comes to this team for San Diego in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That's 226th in all of college basketball, so that's a little bit of an issue. They're giving up about 6 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot corner environment rather than when they are at home. You've had Wayne McKinney the fourth be able to supply this San Diego team with about 14 or so points per contest. It's been a San Diego team that's been very hit or miss with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, going up against the San Francisco team that has allowed opponents to shoot below 32% from 3-point range all season long. Meanwhile, you've got Mongolian Mike, who's just got such good versatility. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. He gives you right around about 3.5 rebounds per game, 8.5 points, and and then you've been able to have Malik Thomas really take hold as well. For Malik Thomas, he was having a little bit of a rough start to begin the season, comes in from USC, but now is registering about 12 points per contest. He, at home, is shooting north of 40% from three-point range, and then you've had Marcus Williams chipping in their 14.5 points per contest with San Diego, just really falling off recently. They did have a pair of wins against Pepperdine and Portland, but that said, this is a defense that it still has been just getting completely gashed against better competition. They have now allowed at least 80 points in all but 2 out of their last 7 games, and it's been a bit of an issue. And for the San Francisco team, they themselves have given up north of 70 points in 3 of their last 4 games. That's because they had to play against St. Mary's and Gonzaga, though. I think that they get right back online. I think that they're going to hold down a San Diego team that has been still a team that's had their issues being able to shoot it from three-point range. San Diego overall this season, they're shooting about 34.5% from 3 with 14 plus turnovers per game. San Francisco should be able to rip the ball away and be able to win this game convincingly. I'm willing to lay up to 18.5 with San Francisco, set by total 145, so also looking at the under. Now we get the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-527, 306-528. Binghamton plays us NJIT. NJIT, an underdog of 6.5 to 7 points out on this game. Going to be getting it at a 139, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Binghamton. Did set them as a 7-point favorite, so here at the 6.5, I'm going to be willing to lay the number when it comes to this NJIT team. They've been able to find their bearings a little bit more with Elijah Buchanan coming in from Manhattan. He actually followed the interim coach from Manhattan a season ago to be able to give this NJIT team a little bit of a breath of life, but that said, when it comes to this Binghamton team, even though they are a team that's still outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this has been a Binghamton team that has really been struggling with regards to being able to guard the three-point arc. Binghamton about 283rd in the country with that regard, but they're going to have the best 2 players, in my opinion, out there on the floor. That would be Temu Chenery, who's been able to come in for Quinnipiac. He's been able to give you about 14.5 points per contest, and then Mr. Versatility is Mr. Samir Torrance. 9 points, 6 boards, 7 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Binghamton, they're only shooting about 29.5% from three-point range, but you've got an NJIT team that's well outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. NJIT 303rd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they're just not the same team when they're away from home. They're allowing opponents to shoot 42.4% from three-point range. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. NJIT about 318th in the country as well with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, with just not a lot down low. Terry Francois has been able to give you about 12.5 points per contest, and then Levi Lowell has been able to chip in there about 5.5 rebounds per game as well. But this is a Binghamton team that, despite the fact that they've got their warts, they should be able to win that battle down low. 112th in the country is this Binghamton team with regards to the rebound rate. NJIT, they're currently clocking in more in the neighborhood about 322nd. I do think the Binghamton wins from within, and with the way that NJIT is just not guarding a soul when they're on the road, and Binghamton is giving it up from three-point range, you do get some points. Set by total 143, so looking at the over and we'll delay up to the 6.5 with Binghamton. 306-529, 306-530. UMass Lowell's playing us with Maine. Maine hopes to not get Maine. They're an underdog of 8 points. So on this game, 137.5 for Lowell. I did set them as a favorite of 6 points. Going to be willing to take 8 plus here with Maine. This is the Maine bunch as the leader in steals from a season ago, and Kellen Tynes, who's been able to do a nice job supplying a little bit of everything for this team. Not generating as many steals this year, but still 2.5 steals, 3.5 assists, 4 boards, 13.5 points per contest for a Maine team that they've had a little bit of a tough time from three-point range. They're only shooting about 30.5% from 3, and they do have to go up against a UMass Lowell team that does rank in the top 40 nationally with regards to rebound rate. That's really the bugaboo for this Maine team, but this has been a Maine bunch that's ranked in the top 100 nationally with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis for UMass Lowell. They're more around 36th, but this is a Lowell team that has a tough time being able to take care of the ball. They do turn the ball over north of 13 times per contest. You've got a Yinde Akeem who's been able to do a nice job at the backcourt, being versatile, 5.5 assists, 15.5 points per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but Lowell, they only shoot about 32% from three-point range. You've got a lot of guys, they're able to do a nice job of hitting the glass, and now you've got back in the fold Abdul Kareem Koulibaly, who's been able to give you overall for the season only about 4.5 rebounds per game. He's been playing very limited minutes. You can tell that when he has been out there, he's not himself. He's pretty much a non-factor at this point. So Max Brooks, who's able to give you 2 blocks, 7 boards per contest, he's become that main man down low for UMass Lowell. But despite the fact that Koulibaly has not been himself in regulation, this has been a team that's been able to do a pretty rock-solid job with regards to their defense. If you look at regulation and regulation only, this has been a team that has given up 70 points or fewer in now 3 out of their last 5 games. It is a Maine team that they've been able to do a nice job holding up with their defense, giving up 73 or fewer in each of their last 4 games. Doesn't sound impressive, but in this conference, it really is, especially with having Peter Filipowski being being able to give you about 13.5 points, 7.5 boards. I do think that Maine, while they lose the battle on the glass, they're going to be able to force some turnovers, remain lively in this game, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Maine. I did set them as an underdog more around 6 points. I did set my total at 138. I did think that this is going to be a slower slog, but UMass Lowell is a little bit more of an up-tempo team, and this has been a Lowell team that they've been able to get to at least 80 points, and now 3 of their last 4 games. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Maine, figuring we're going to get some late game following. 306, 531, 306, 532. UMBC has sort of faced off against Bryan. Bryan is a favorite of between 11.5 and 12 points. Total game is 165.5. So Bryan is a 13-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It is a Bryan team that has been rough with regards to their defense, to say the least, and the biggest thing with Bryan is that their rebound rate is terrible. They're outside the top 300 with this regard. UMBC, though, they're a team that's well outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate as well. And Bryan, they're able to guard the arc. They're allowing opponents at home to shoot just 21.5% from three-point range. Meanwhile, this UMBC team, they're just getting completely cooked from beyond the arc. They're a team that is allowing opponents to shoot 35% from three-point range at home. Now, on the road, it's actually 28% from three, so that has actually been significantly better for this UMBC team as well outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but UMBC, they very much do live and die with a three ball. They're shooting about 36% as a collective. You've been able to have a pair of guys in Marcus Banks along with Bryce Johnson, should have combined about 37.5% from three. Both of these guys give between about 11.5 to 12.5 points per contest, but Johnson continues to deal with a little bit of an ailment, so that means that Deion Brown has to continue to be Mr. Do-It-All. 17 points, 6.5 boards per contest, going up against a Bryan team that has the best scorer out there on the floor in Sharif Gross-Bullock, 19 points, shooting 38% from the outside. Now, it is a Bryan team that they shoot just 65.5% of the free throw line, so in a late game following scenario, that's not necessarily too great. And for UMBC, while they are a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, they're not really an efficient offense. 229th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Bryan they themselves 298th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. So you get a lot of possessions, you don't necessarily get a lot of efficiency. That said, this is still a UMBC team that has been very brutal with regards to their defense. This is a UMBC team that they have now allowed at least 75 points in all but 3 of their games ever since the beginning of the month of December. Meanwhile, this is a Bryan team that they've been a little bit better with their defense, giving up 74 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. You've also got someone in Earl Timberlake who's bringing sexy back down low, giving you about 8.5 rebounds per game. Bryan hasn't necessarily dove into their bench a ton, but ever since the coaching switch they've made to Phil Martelli Jr., they have been looking to utilize that bench a little bit more. I do think that that is going to be enough to be able to give this UMBC team different looks, and with Bryan being able to take a little bit more hold with their defense, I do think that this total has gone just a little bit too low. Set my total 165 at the 165.5, looking under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 12.5 points with Bryan. 306, 533, 306, 534. St. Francis, Pennsylvania, it's a road face-off against Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut, a 13.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 139.5. Did set my total at a 139.5. We were seeing a few different numbers out there before, so we shall see if we're able to get back to about a 139, maybe a 138.5. That would be my buy point on the over. But with the Central Connecticut team, I did make them a favorite of 13.5 points. We saw some 14.5s. That was the opener, so if we get 14 plus, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with St. Francis of Pennsylvania. It is a Central Connecticut team that is outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate, but they're able to take massive hold with regards to their backcourt. This is a Central Connecticut team that is going to have the best overall scorer out there on the floor, and Alan Jean Rose, who's been able to give you about 15.5 points, 4.5 boards on 36.5% three-point shooting, and you also get about 36.5% three-point shooting and 13 points, about 3.5 assists out of Jordan Jones as well for a Central Connecticut team that does a nice job retaining the ball. Only about 11 turnovers per contest. Meanwhile, Eli Wilborn and Cam Gregory looking to do a little bit of everything for the St. Francis team. Wilborn, 7.5 boards, 10 points per contest. Meanwhile, Gregory, he's your main scorer with about 13.5 points per contest, but he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury. The team has been without him really ever since their Lemoyne game on January 21st, and the 2 games without him, honestly, not too bad on defense. They have now given up about 74 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. In the 2 games without him, they scored 75 against Sacred Heart to win, and then they lost to Merrimack, but that was just a bad stylistic matchup in general. The St. Francis of Pennsylvania team turned the ball over nearly 14 times for contest with or without Cam Gregory. They were probably going to get toasted in that one, but with St. Francis of Pennsylvania, it is a big loss for them, but they've been able to get a little bit more out of some of these ancillary pieces. You've been able to see Aaron Talbot be able to give you about 8 points per contest, and Carlos Lopez Jr. has really been the guy that has stepped up in recent games. Last 2 games, they combined 21 points, 8 assists, so I do think that though Cam Gregory being out of the fold, it does hurt this team a little bit, and I mean, with the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team, it has been a team that's been relatively rough with their offense all season long, but for Central Connecticut, they are rising up with their offense as well, 69 plus points in each of their last 5 games, so if we could get to a 139 or less, looking at the over end for St. Francis, would need at least 14 points to be able to take a shot on them. 13 or less will be willing to lay with Central Connecticut. 306-535, 306-536. Vermont plays us Albany. Albany, an 11.5-point underdog. Total on this game is 149.5. Semi-line at 9.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Albany. This has been an Albany squad that has been absolutely supreme at being able to cut off the three-point arc. Albany, 13th in the country with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this is a Vermont team that they're very slow, they're very controlled, and they do a very solid job of being able to put the ball in the bucket, but they're allowing opponents to shoot about 35.5% from three-point range when they're at home as well. Now, this is a Vermont team that's much more clean with regards to their offense. Albany about 195th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Vermont 103rd, and for Vermont, this is a team that has Matt Verado, who stands right around 6'8". He's able to stroke it in the high 30s from three-point range, but for Albany, they are not going to have their turnover issues pop up quite as much. Albany has been turning the ball over right around about 14 times per contest. They go up against a Vermont team that's in the bottom 75 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and for Vermont, they're honestly not a bad rebound rate team, but you don't have anyone other than Shamir Bogues, who's been able to give you 5.3 boards and 11 points per contest, giving north of 5 rebounds per game. Vermont does a nice job retaining the ball themselves, though, only about 9 turnovers per game, but Sebastian Thomas, Amari Marshall combined for 36 points. You've got Thomas giving you 4.5 assists per contest, Marshall shooting 37% from 3, should be able to keep this team lively, and then you've got the best rebounder in this game on the Albany side, Jonathan Beagle, 13 points, 9 boards per contest, the 14 turnovers per game for Albany, a little bit of a concern, but I do think that Albany is going to be able to hold in there. This has been an Albany offense that's gotten to at least 73 in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, Vermont, they have been really terrific with their defense, 65 points of fear surrendered in each of their last 4 games. So, scenario if something's got to give. Albany is playing at warp speed. Vermont in the bottom 25 with regards to total possessions per game. I set my total at 145.5. I do think that the slower style wins out, but not enough to where Vermont wins by double figures. So I'm at line at 9.5, looking at the points with Albany and looking at the under. 306, 537, 306, 538. Fairleigh Dickinson is playing us to Long Island. Long Island is an underdog of 8 points. Total on this game is 153.5 with Long Island. I did set them as a 10-point dog. I'm going to be willing to lay with Fairleigh Dickinson. Now, one thing Long Island has done really well, they're cutting off the three-point arc. They're a top 75 team with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but this is a Long Island team that, despite the fact that Fairleigh Dickinson does not have a lot of size, they're just not going to be able to win that battle down low. 331st in the country is this Long Island team with regards to rebound rate. Fairleigh Dickinson, more on 311th, and it's not about size, it's how you use it for Fairleigh Dickinson, as you've got a trio of guys, Joel Emmanuel, Ansley Almoner, along with Sean Moore, who have been able to do a good job of pulling together for a combined 18.5 rebounds per game. They combine for about 40 points per contest, while Almoner should be shooting about 38% from three-point range. And for LIU, this team is in the bottom 25 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. You've got the Strickland brothers, Ty and Terrell, who have really had to take hold of this offense. Terrell, who is the son of the father in Rod Strickland, both of these Stricklands are, he's been able to give you about 3 assists, shooting 35.5% from 3, and Ty has been able to give you 15 points per contest, but with Long Island, 14 turnovers per game, shooting 29.5% from three-point range, with RJ Green being the only guy that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. That's a little bit of an issue, and they're going to be going up against a bunch where you do want to be attacking them from three-point range. It's Fairleigh Dickinson team with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 319th in the country. They're even worse at home, but for LIU, they just don't have the outside shooting to be able to take hold. This is, in my opinion, it's a little bit of a bad matchup for this Long Island team. It's Fairleigh Dickinson. I do think that by committee, they're going to be able to do a good job of winning the battle in the glass and taking this game by 10 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Fairleigh Dickinson, made them a 10-point favorite, despite the fact that Fairleigh Dickinson plays relatively fast. They're outside the top 250 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, in LIU, a very similar team. This is an LIU bunch that has been held below 70 points before their last 5 games, so I set my total 152, looking under, and I want to lay with Fairleigh Dickinson. 306, 539, 306, 540. High point hopes to not be a low point. They play us at Longwood. Longwood is an underdog of 6 points, and your total on this game is 145.5 with Longwood. I did set them as an underdog of 5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take those 6 with Longwood. This Longwood team has been a top 50 team nationally with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a High Point team that's been a top 40 team nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. So this is a nice offense on defense tango. You've got a High Point team that has Abdullah Thiam, who's been able to give you 15 plus points per contest, and then the duo of Duke Miles along Kiza Gifa. They've been able to combine for 35.5 points, 7 assists per contest, with Gifa shooting 40% from three-point range. But with this High Point team, they do shoot about 37.5% from three-point range. This has been a Longwood team that's been able to erase the arc, though. This is a Longwood team that, in a roadside shoot scoring environment, allows opponents to shoot just 31.7% from three-point range. And this has been a Longwood team that's been able to do a solid job, along with High Point, of being able to hit the glass. For this High Point team, you've been able to get right around about 8 rebounds per game out of Kamani Hamilton, and then Jocelyn Bodu has been able to give you about 8 boards per contest. But with Longwood, this team, in terms of rebound rate, they're clocking and 14th in all of college basketball. As it is Christmas for them, Michael Christmas. We give you 7 boards per contest. Longwood's biggest issue is taking care of the ball. About 13 turnovers per game. Waylon Napper at the point guard spot, 4 assists, 14 points per contest, but turns the ball over 2.7 times per contest with a 19% three-point shooting percentage. But Jonathan Massey gives you seal and a half, 11 points per contest. It is a Longwood team that has their issues with regards to their offense, but defensively, this has been one of the more stout mid-majors in all of college basketball. I do think that they're going to be able to rise up against a High Point team that has been a machine with their offense. They scored at least 78 points in every one of their games in the month of January, and this has been a High Point team that's gotten to at least 74 points in all but one of their games ever since the beginning of the month of December. But I do think that Longwood is going to be able to go out there, slow them down just a little bit in this spot. I did set my line at 5, so I'm going to be willing to take the 6. I did set my total at 149. I do think the High Point is still going to get theirs. High Point, though, outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've given up at least 79 in 4 of their last 5 games to help ignite this Longwood team. So looking at the over and taking the points with Longwood, 3 of 6, 541, 3 of 6, 542. Wagner is going to be playing against Lemoyne. Lemoyne is an underdog of 2 points, so on this game is 130.5 to 131. So Wagner is 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. This is a Wagner team that is in the bottom 75 with regards to total possessions per game, but with Wagner, they've really been able to rise up defensively. Wagner, 122nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Lemoyne team that has formed some very demonstrative home and road splits. They're giving up about 10.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. Now you've been able to get good production out of Kayem Cleary. Cleary has been able to give you a nice amount of rebounds with about 6 boards per contest. He's been able to chip in there right around about 15.5 points per contest as well. But that said, he's right now the only guy on the roster that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. It is Wagner team that does a relatively solid job of being able to rebound by committee, as you've been able to get right around about 5 rebounds and 9 points per contest out of Tayron Allen. For Wagner, they shoot only about 33% from 3, but Melvin Council has done a nice job running the show. He's been able to give the team 14 points, 3.5 assists, seal and a half per contest. It is a Wagner team that has been able to do a nice job of just making sure that they do the little things well. And for this Wagner team, though, they're 244th in the country with regards to rebound rate. This is a Lemoyne team that they could be at down low, 339th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and this is going to be a Wagner team that they're going to need to guard the three-point arc to be able to win this game, but I do think that they're going to be able to do so. This Wagner bunch, 35th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, despite the fact that they've been dealing with the injury to Zaire Williams. I do think that Wagner takes a little bit more care of the ball. Luke Sutherland for this Lemoyne team has been able to give you double-figure amount of points per contest, but at 6'6", 6'7", he's only able to give you about 3.5, 4 rebounds per game for a bunch in Lemoyne that they themselves only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. But I do think that while Lemoyne wants to play fast, they've gotten to at least 73 points in each of their last 4 games. Wagner, I think they're going to be able to take the air of the ball, and they're going to be able to play much more slowly. Wagner did not allow a single opponent to reach 70 in the month of January, so did set Wagner as a 4.5 point favorite. Going to be one to lay the number, and did set my total at 132.5. I think we've gone a little bit too low with this total. I do think that you can get some late game felling in with Wagner, though they play slowly. They don't turn the ball over, allowing them to maximize those possessions. So looking at the over and looking to lay with Wagner, 3 of 6, 543, 3 of 6, 544. Sacred Heart plays us to Sonel. Sonel is an underdog of 11 points. On this game, it's 141.5 with Sonel. I did set them as an underdog of 15.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay with Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart has been dealing with injuries throughout the entirety of the season, most notably to Tanner Thomas, who was a double-figure scorer, but we've had Nico Galletti be just absolutely dominant for the team, being able to supply about 14.5 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals at 6'6". He's able to pop it at about 32% from 3-point range, and then the 2 Metro Atlantic transfers in Aiden Carpenter, Raheem Solomon. These guys have been able to combine for in that neighborhood about 15.5 points per contest. Carpenter shoots 35% from 3-point range for a Sacred Heart team that defensively, it's not like they've been dominant or anything like that, but this is a team that at home they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 29.5% from 3-point range, and they go up against the Sonel team that, quite frankly, they're outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're 312th, allowing 12 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and this is a Sonel team that they allow opponents to shoot 37% from 3-point range in a roadside corner environment while not having a single guy down low that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. You do have Max Zagorowski, who gives you 12 points, 4.5 boards per contest, and Tony Felder has been able to do an okay job coming in from VMI, giving you about 11 points. He has only turned the ball over 2 times per contest, but Jackson Bengini being in and out of the fold, coming back but not being himself, scoring 5 points or fewer in 3 of the last 4 games. That's been a big issue for a team that only shoots 30.5% from 3-point range. Sacred, I do think is going to be able to stonewall Stonehill in this spot. I did set my total at a 141.5. This opened up at a 140.5, so if we can get back to that 140.5, looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Sacred Heart, 3 of 6, 545, 3 of 6, 546. Kennesaw St, we give our own to Lane Kiffin go Elves. They play us to Bellarmine. Bellarmine is a 7.5 point underdog. Total game between 150 and 151 with Bellarmine. I did set them as an underdog of 10.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Bellarmine team that's just not the same team that we've seen from past years. Typically, they're efficient on offense, inefficient on defense, but Bellarmine just 307th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, giving about 5 more turnovers per game in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home at Bellarmine. There's still a mess with regards to their defense as well, 340th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against the Kennesaw State team that they've been a little bit brutal with regards to their three-point shooting, but it's been able to come up a little bit more recently. When it comes to Kennesaw State, they've been able to get about 17 points per contest out of Simeon Kodal. He and Terrell Burton have been able to combine for closer to about 33 points per contest. Burton has been your main facilitator, 6 assists per contest. Kodal has been able to give you 3 assists per contest for a Kennesaw bunch that they only turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest, despite the fact that they play at warp speed. They're in the top 20 nationally with regards to total possessions per game for Kennesaw State. Typically, they have a little bit of a disadvantage down low, and Langston Hatton for Bellarmine has been able to give you right around about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game, but Bellarmine 342nd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. This is a Kennesaw State team that has Devin Robinson, who's able to give you about 6 boards per contest for Kennesaw State, more around 273rd in the country with regards to rebound rate. And for Bellarmine, you've been able to get your main guys back in the fold, like Bash Weiland back. He, along with Ben Johnson, have been able to combine for about 25 points per contest, but Weiland is only shooting about 23.5% from three-point range. Garrett Tipton shoots 39.5% from the outside, but he is pretty much the only guy that gives you north of 6 points per contest, shooting above 36% from three-point range. Bellarmine very much lives and dies by the three ball, which is why they've scored fewer than 70 points in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is a Kennesaw bunch that has now given up at least 75 points in each of their last 5 games, but they've gotten to at least 75 in each of their last 5. So slow and controlled Bellarmine against super up-tempo Kennesaw State. I think the Kennesaw State wins out. I'm willing to lay up to 10.5 with Kennesaw State. Did set my total at 148.5. I just don't think that Bellarmine does their part with this total, so looking at the under and looking to lay it with Kennesaw State. Go Owls. 3 of 6.547, 3 of 6.548. Queens NC plays us at Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is a 6-point road favorite. Total on this game is 160.5. Maine Queens a 4-point underdog, so we're going to back the fighting Nick Lorensens here. We're going to be taking a look at a Queens NC team that, and they don't do a great job with regards to their rebound rate, but you do have a trio of guys at AJ McKee, BJ McLaurin, along with Dayton Albury. That is a very good trio. Albury, along with McKee, have been able to combine for about 34.5 points per contest, with Albury shooting 35% from three-point range and chipping in there 4 assists per contest. McLaurin chips in there about 11.5 points. Main rebounder with about 6 boards per contest, and Eastern Kentucky should be able to win that battle down low. Isaiah Kosar leads the country in blocks with nearly 4 per contest, 15.5 points, 9 boards, but for Eastern Kentucky, they are a bottom 20 team in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and that is the whole lifeblood of Queens NC. This Queens NC team is looking to play up-tempo, top 30 team with regards to total possessions per game, and they're looking to bomb it from 3-point range. This Queens NC team, overall for the season, they're only shooting about 33.5% from 3-point range. You're going to be going up against a Eastern Kentucky bunch that has been able to get quite a bit of production out of the likes of Leland Walker, has been able to give you 15 points, but they themselves only shooting about 32% from 3-point range. It's an Eastern Kentucky team that has been not generating as many turnovers as they have in past years as well, so that should help out the cause of Queens. Along with that, Queens shooting 36.2% from 3-point range at home, about 29% in a road/neutral court environment. It is an Eastern Kentucky team that they are shooting about 34.5% from the outside when they are away from home, and this is a Queens team that they're outside the top 100 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I should say they're outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So I do think that you're going to get plenty of possessions and plenty of points in this one. It's an Eastern Kentucky team that is on a burner run. They've been able to win 7 straight games. They've gotten to at least 75 points in each of their last 5 games. Going up against Queens team that has allowed at least 79 points in every one of their last 5 games, but for Queens, they've gotten to at least 75 in each of their last 4, so I think that you're in for a high-scoring expose, and I do think the Queens going to exploit that weak Eastern Kentucky 3-point shooting defense, so looking at the oversight, I told 162, and 1take 6 with Queens, 3 of 6.549, 3 of 6.550. Central Arkansas plays us the Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast, a favorite of 2 points. Total game is 147.5. I did set my total at 147.5, so going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement here. We were seeing a little bit earlier in the day a 147 pop-up. At that number, I will be taking a look at the over. It's a Florida Gulf Coast team that is playing at a bottom 100 pace with regards to total possessions per game, but they get to go up against a Central Arkansas team that is outside the top 3 with regards to both points allowed on a per possession basis and opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, though it is a Florida Gulf Coast team that they've been dealing with injuries all season long, and they themselves outside the top 300 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Have Isaiah Thompson back in the fold. He's been dealing with injuries, but has been able to rise up recently. A combined 40 points in the last 2 games. Looks like he's back to full force, shooting 33% for 3 for a Dunk City team that they do shoot about 35% from the outside. Zach Anderson, along with Keyshawn Kellerman, have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game, but It's been a rhymeless and rudderless Florida Gulf Coast team all season long. They follow up wins against Florida Atlantic and teams like that, and then they go sub 500 in Atlantic 10 play. It's very hard to figure out as Florida Gulf Coast, not bad on the glass, about 117th in the country with regards to rebound rate for the Central Arkansas team. They're 312th in all of college basketball. They're expecting Cameron Under to really be able to take hold of the offense. He has been out all season long, so Elias Cato has had to give you about 10 points per contest, and the main man that has been able to contribute for Central Arkansas has been 6'9" Tucker Anderson, who's been able to shoot 38.5% for three, 14.5 points per contest, but this is a Central Arkansas team that's had to slow down their tempo due to having just a lack of guys out there. They're generating about 7.5 turnovers per game, and you've been able to get about 8 rebounds per game out of Mr. Etam, Bazi Etam, hopefully I said that correctly, but for Central Arkansas, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, much like their defense, they are outside of the top 250 with this regard. Now, they're only scoring about 1.2 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/stretch corner environment rather than at home. I do think that this could be a game that's going to be close enough for late game felling, but in the end, I do think the Florida Gulf Coast going to be able to win from within. I do think the Florida Gulf Coast lights Central Arkansas ablaze from three-point range, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with Florida Gulf Coast at a 147 or less. Looking at the over, and we're at things up with 306-551, 306-552. North Alabama plays us at Stetson. Stetson finds themselves as an underdog of point total on this game is 150.5. I said my total 154.5, so looking at the over, North Florida is in the top 75 with regards to total possessions per game, and this North Alabama team, they've been able to do a solid job having Jakari Lane, KJ Johnson, sorry if I called them North Florida a second ago, being able to combine for about 30 points per contest, shooting a combined 36% from 3 points for a bunch in North Alabama. That they do shoot about 36% from distance, and they get to go up against a Stetson team that has had a tough time guarding the arc all season long. Stetson is allowing opponents to shoot about 34% from 3-point range, 183rd in all of college basketball in that regard. North Alabama, certainly they give you the green light to be able to shoot from 3-point range as well. 274th in all of college basketball in that regard, and Stetson, they've got one of the best period scorers that you're going to find in college basketball, Jalen Blackman, who's been able to give you 20.5 points per contest. Stetson outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do shoot 37% from 3-point range. They only turn the ball over about 10.9 times per contest as well, so they're very clean with regards to their offense. They've also been able to have Abin Gestirse, who's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, so he's been able to help this team out a little bit there. But with this North Alabama team, you've been able to get some relatively solid production down low at Damian Forrest, who's been able to give you about 8.5 or so rebounds per game. The question is, can Stetson and their defense be able to hold up just enough in this game, because you know that they're going to bomb it from 3, though. They only shoot about 35% from 3 on the road compared to 40.5% from 3-point range at home. I think that both of these teams just hit plenty of shots, and I do think that in the end, North Alabama on their home floor, they get it done. Set my line at 4.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 1, and I'm going to be looking at the over semi-total at a 154.5, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the Beeson family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @Unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Name does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks to Nick Lorensen of Mid-Major Madness for joining me in the last segment, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you tomorrow. Thanks so much for tuning in.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.